My teacher at my school now thinks I'm ableist, towards myself. It's exactly how it sounds, but I'll elaborate. I am 14, autistic, and though I don't appear so from years of practice, people/my friends at my school do know. I've never received any poop about it and my friends are supportive, making funny jokes that I appreciate because it signifies they're comfortable enough around me to laugh about stuff like that. I've never taken any offense. Teachers have to know, in the UK it's classed as special educational needs, so it's necessary for them to be aware of, and the school has made some accommodations for me. But a few days ago this all went a bit haywire. My friend and I were in English having a conversation and not really paying any attention, when she said something about me being autistic and I jokingly replied, "What do you mean? I could never be anything of the sort." The teacher heard and went slightly pale. She asked me to stay behind after the lesson and told me that I had to be careful about what I said. I asked her to explain. She said that the school's policy had no exception for ableist discrimination. I replied that I hadn't said anything discriminatory and I also reminded her that I wasn't neurotypical anyway. She raised her voice and sternly told me that the other day she had to stop an Asian student from being racist to Asians as he had made a self-deprecating pun towards his own race. I was so confused and I asked her why she had taken it upon herself to simultaneously be the savior of the entire autistic community and the entire Asian community from their own members. She did not take well to this and wrote me up for it. It doesn't bother me all that much and I personally found it quite funny, but I thought I'd share. What is a weird childhood memory you have that you don't know whether it's true or not? I have this one memory. I just turned 2 years old, and my family and I were at my grandparents' backyard pool. My mom was in the shallow end of the pool with my older brother, and he was clinging to her, too afraid to dip even a toe into the water. My dad was on the patio on the side of the shallow end with my grandpa and grandpa. They were barbecuing and chatting. Just a peaceful family day. I remember thinking my mom looked a little annoyed that my brother was being unreasonably afraid of the water, so my 2-year-old mind decided I would show my brother how it was done. I got out of the shallow end of the pool, and ran down to the deep end. I took off my water wings and life jacket, then proclaimed proudly to my family about being brave and better than my brother. Then jumped in. The next part of my memory takes a very different tone. I just remember how serene and peaceful it was. Everything was quiet, and calm. To this day, I haven't ever experienced anything similar to it. I was sinking, all I could see was blue and bubbles from my mouth were going up in front of my eyes. It was so peaceful and comforting, I could stay like that forever. In reality, I was drawing and sinking to the bottom of the pool. Next thing I know, I see my dad and grandpa plunge into the pool, fully clothed, swimming towards me. I don't know who got to me first to pull me out, and I don't remember anything after that. I asked my parents and grandparents about this, and they essentially changed the topic on me, so I have a suspicion it is true, but no confirmation. It just sticks out as an extremely vivid, and oddly happier memory from my childhood. Even after growing up and knowing that I nearly drowned, I still wish to experience that again.
I discovered my boyfriend has been living a double life our entire 6-month relationship. I, 23 female, had known John, 28 male, for years as his mom was my manager at a care home. We were always very friendly and even at one point his mom, my manager, tried setting us up. He then got into a relationship with someone else and they were together for 2-ish years. We didn't speak much while they were together but we weren't super close anyway, so honestly I barely noticed that we hadn't spoken for a long time. Anyways, they broke up at the beginning of this year. At this time, I was a dog walker and he had a dog. I got a random message from him one day after years of next to no contact, asking of good places to walk his dog around a specific area in our town. I of course replied and I went with him around the area with his dog, and we went for a walk 2 weeks after he sent the initial text. He told me he had broken up with his psycho ex and told me about all the unhinged things she had done to him throughout the relationship. Things like cheating, abuse, locking him out of their house, making him sleep in the spare room because he snored, blah blah blah. Of course, after hearing about what he went through, I told him that if he needed me I would be there, and also apologized for not being there at the time and not reaching out throughout his relationship. We began talking, then dating, and we got into a relationship. Everything was so lovely for a few months. He met my family. I already knew his but didn't meet them when we were together. This should have been a red flag, but apparently I'm colorblind. He used to have a lot of work parties and I attended one of them. They were field parties, very juvenile, drinking and doing substances in a field with music and a fire type of gathering. He had always asked that we don't post on any social medias about us, or post selfies etc., as he knows his psycho ex followed my Instagram and would have some abuse to hurl at me or him if she saw it. I was gullible and believed this to be true, because why wouldn't I? He was kind, loving and never gave me any reason to doubt him. I completely forgot about his no social media rule at the bonfire and posted a blurry picture of the bonfire and 2 of his friends in front of it. He didn't say anything at the time, but all of this backstory will make sense in a minute. We then planned a getaway to Wales. He told me he had a discount for a specific website and then we discussed where we wanted to stay etc. He then booked it when I wasn't there, told me where it was, time and date etc. I booked it off of work and we were both very excited. The day before we were supposed to leave he tells me the house had been double booked and we could no longer go. I asked to see the email and he said he couldn't find it. This is where I start becoming suspicious. We decide to go to Cornwall instead and stay in their family caravan. Not as nice as the place we had booked, but it is what it is. We travel down on a 4-hour car ride, get set up in the caravan and go for food. A few times he would leave the caravan to take a call from his dad, sister or friend. I didn't think much of it because a lot of the time he would say it was a work friend, he was a manager, so I just thought business as usual, they just need some advice, etc. He would sit in his car on these phone calls, which at the time didn't raise much suspicion. He would also many times go and lay in a spare room and watch films on his phone instead of sitting with me and watching them. This all felt a bit weird, but I didn't want to bring anything up and ruin the trip. We went for a drink on our final day there. He's on his phone a lot and in playing with the dog and finishing off my drinks. He put his phone down on the table as he is pressing the off button. In the split second it was on, I see his ex's name pinned to the top of his messaging list, with a message that had just been sent. Not only this, there were hearts next to her name, again, very juvenile. I don't say anything at the time because I'm not trying to be stranded in Cornwall with no way back if it got heated, and he drove off. So I keep what I have just seen to myself and act normal. Naturally I'm texting my friends like, you'll never guess what, and asking for advice. Most of them said to confront him, but I didn't feel comfortable doing so when I was so far from home. We get home the following day, we say goodbye etc., and he goes back to his house. At this point I'm curious as to what the hell just happened on our getaway, especially because of all the nasty stuff he had said about her, telling me she is blocked and will never speak to her again etc. I messaged one of his exes who I was friends with in secondary school and asked what happened between them, because I felt he was likely lying and cheating with his recent ex. She tells me he cheated on her. So now I'm mad because I should have clocked it sooner or even branched out and asked this girl what had happened just as a little check. But, it turns out, the girl from secondary school knows his recent ex, let's call her Molly. Molly ends up messaging me saying that my high school friend had told her about me and John and that she wanted to know details like how long, how intimate etc. I took my time replying because I was anxious, especially after everything I had been told about her. I go back to the message and start typing out a response. Before I can press send she sends me a picture of 2 positive pregnancy tests. I stop typing and message John instead. I ask him if he has been speaking to Molly recently. He tells me no. I tell him I saw her name on his phone. He says it's because he wanted to see the dogs they previously shared and she had only just started letting him see them again. I ask him why he lied in the first place by telling me he hadn't spoken to her at all, and only now that he knows he got caught is he willing to tell me he's been going over to see their dogs. He doesn't reply. So I go back to Molly's message and we get to talking. Yes, they were broken up. But they hadn't stopped seeing each other. Not at any point in our 6-month relationship was there a week where he hadn't gone to hers at least 3 times. 3 times a week whilst in a relationship with me. At this point I'm pissed off, especially after learning she's pregnant and that he knew all about it. I message him something along the lines of, "Aw, I'm sure you'll be a good father." He finally replies to my bait and asks how I know, if I have been talking to Molly, telling me not to believe a word she has been saying and that I should know him better and to believe him over her. At this point she has phoned me and is telling me she's 6 weeks along, he's been sleeping with her, staying at her house most nights, and or coming over on his work breaks if he was busy that night. Busy? Bull crap. Anyways, he's trying to tell me she's lying and he likes me but thought we were just friends so no harm etc. Friends? He asked me to be his girlfriend? Is he delusional? Meanwhile, Molly is telling me that she saw messages on his phone from me once, the one with the dog walking routes, and they got in an argument about me then, and since that she had always had her suspicions about me and him. She would constantly ask him about me, asking to meet me if we were just friends. Valid point from her. She also goes on to tell me that he uninvited her from the work field party, the one I attended. I tell her I was there and she said she knew already because she saw the picture on my Instagram, and her and John got into an argument about me that night too. I also found out that he was constantly reassuring her by telling her that he would never do anything with me because I was fat, I wasn't attractive, I was ugly etc. All whilst he was hanging out the back of me. I tell her all the things he called her too. She said she had messaged me weeks before asking about me and John, but had deleted it because she didn't think it would be true and that she might have been making a mistake. Boy, I wish she hadn't deleted it. She also told me, and showed me video proof of him hurting her, laying his hands on their dogs, and other things he did to them that was just awful. She had hidden cameras so that she could get it all on evidence if she ever needed it. It also turns out his family and friend calls on the trip were her. I had never met his family because he had never told them about us. He had never booked the initial trip to Wales. The Cornwall holiday was supposed to be for him and Molly. When he cancelled the holiday with her, he said he was taking his cousin as he was going through a hard time. Just lies after lies. I messaged John a few final messages and let him know she has told me everything. Everything. And he ignores me for a while before coming back with a message so long I didn't even read it. I say goodbye and tell him to have a nice life. I haven't spoken to him since, and she hasn't either. She has moved house as he began stalking her, sending her letters begging for forgiveness and apologizing profusely.
Am I the a-hole for yelling at my daughter's mom in front of them? I'm a 37-year-old dad with 3 awesome girls, aged 8, 10, and 12. Their mom and I split up when the youngest was around 4, but she still pays child support and stays in touch. I noticed something on my oldest daughter's underwear while doing laundry a while ago. There was little red spots on it. I gently asked her about it, and she got emotional, sharing that she tried to call her mom for help, but didn't get a response. She had been using toilet paper as a solution, which isn't the best way to handle it. I reassured her that periods are natural and nothing to be ashamed of, and we looked up some helpful information together online. We even had a fun trip to the store to pick out the right products for her. Feeling like a pro at this, I decided to have a bonding night with my other two daughters as well. My 12-year-old volunteered to be part of the prep team, and it turned out to be a wonderful experience for all of us. I even learned about menstrual cups and how they help the environment. The other day, when my ex finally called back, I usually leave the room during their chat and then handle the co-parenting talk afterward. But this time, my ex got really mad at me for discussing periods with the girls. She called me names and said I should have handled it myself or called someone else. It got heated, and I may have raised my voice too, which I don't usually do. I know it wasn't the best way to handle it, and I feel really bad about it, especially when I saw my younger daughters at the door, crying. It broke my heart to see them upset. My 12-year-old tried to defend me, but I don't want her to be in the middle of our disagreements. We're still trying to figure things out, but I love my girls more than anything and want the best for them. So, in this situation, do you think I was the a-hole for raising my voice? My girlfriend likes me to go by different names during intimacy. My girlfriend and I have been together for 1 year, and for the past 6 months we've taken a mini vacation at least once a month. In the past 4 months we've gone on 5 mini vacations, and every time she wanted me to go by a different name. It's always been the same name, Matt Gok. I figured this was just a fantasy name and went along with it. She's done things with Matt Gok that she's never done with me, Jason. Matt took her butt stuff V card. Matt was the first person she has ever put whipped cream on herself for and let him lick it off. If I bring it up to her that I, Jason, want to try those things with her, she says she's not that type of girl. With Matt, she is down for literally everything you could imagine. She's pretty vanilla when we are at home and when I go by Jason, which I won't complain about. I never needed to have straps or whips, but now that I know it's an option I feel like I'm missing out. Here's the kicker, I had to pick her up from work a few days ago and walked into her office to look for her. This was the first time I had been to her office. I spoke to the secretary to ask where she was and started on my way there. As we were leaving, her coworkers came to introduce themselves to me. From down the hall I see this guy coming towards all of us, and he says something along the lines of, "Hi, I'm Matt Gok, SVP of Marketing." After we finished talking to everyone we went to the car. I waited for her to say something, but she never did. I don't know what to say to her or if there is anything to say. I feel really uncomfortable and I see our mini vacations in a completely different light now. Is this something I should be worried about, or is it normal? My girlfriend likes me to go by different names during intimacy. I came to the unfathomable conclusion that there is a chance she is cheating, and that made me so sick I literally puked. I called my boss to ask for Friday off for personal reasons. I spent the day driving around, looking for potential apartments. We don't live together, but I wanted to make sure if things went bad and she entered a bipolar breakdown and tried to find me, she'd have a harder time. This brings us to Saturday, the day I promised myself I would say something. I invited her over for breakfast but instantly regretted it because I was getting so nervous that I completely lost my appetite. She walked in the door and she instantly knew something was different. I was hoping to ease into it, but I ended up blurting out, "I met Matt Gok." She tried to act casual about it, but I could tell she didn't expect me to know about him. For the next 3 or so minutes things were calm. I talked about how I see the past 4 months completely differently. She started full on ugly crying and said she was sorry. I told her I'm going to work on forgiving her, because if I don't I think it will eat me up inside. I won't forget what happened, but I'll at least try to move on. She started to talk about how she'll work on building my trust again. I interrupted her by saying that isn't necessary, as we were no longer together. If I wasn't so emotionally crushed, I would have been amazed at the transition. She started begging me to give her another chance. I stood up and went to my room to grab a few boxes of all the gifts she gave me. I told her that I had already made up my mind to break up with her. After some back and forth, she realized that I was serious. I knew the exact moment she knew I was serious because she went from crying to yelling. It started off with insults, insulting my family and even my deceased little brother, but when that didn't work she tried throwing the truth in my face to hurt me. It started off that I was fat, ugly, lazy, stupid, and I had a useless job. In the middle of her tirade, she said Matt's pee-pee was way bigger than mine too. As she was yelling at me, she ended up saying what happened between the two of them. She started sleeping with Matt 3 years ago. They were on some sort of work trip and ended up sleeping together. From there it went from once in a while to once a week. Matt called things off 4 months ago because he met a girl. She was using the vacations because she missed being with Matt. I don't really remember the rest of Saturday, but do remember spending the night in the hospital due to a stab wound my now ex inflicted on me. My frugal sister wants me to be her free babysitter in Disneyland. Now, she posted on Facebook that I ruined the vacation because I lost my passport. I still live at home while my sister is married and has 2 kids. Whenever she comes over to visit my parents, she sticks me with the kids. This wouldn't be a problem except she doesn't visit for an evening. She will come for a week. And for that week I'm an unpaid nanny. If we go out to a restaurant I have to entertain them because my mom needs to talk to my sister and brother-in-law. You get the picture. Anyway, my parents decided that since this was my last summer before I became an adult we would be going to Disneyland to celebrate my graduation. I asked who was going and they said it was just the 3 of us. But when we got to the airport my sister and her family were there. Strangely enough they were also going to Disneyland. I went into my backpack and grabbed my passport. I put it in my sock. When we got to the international security office I couldn't find it. We looked everywhere. I had to Uber home and I missed my flight. Oh well. I get to stay home by myself for a week of peace and quiet. My parents were very mad at me for losing my passport. The money they spent on my flight and entrance was wasted. Darn. My mom and sister have both been posting about how hard it is to be at Disneyland with two little ones. They both posted that I ruined the vacation by being so thoughtless. My dad says he knows why I did and he understands. But he says I should have let him know so he didn't waste money. He said he would have gone along with my ruse. I feel bad about wasting money, but I have been to Disneyland before. And I will go again later by myself or with friends. Those who had a wedding cancelled at the last second, what was your reason for doing so? She broke me. So I ruined her entire life. It all started about 10 years ago. I was happily engaged to a girl, Nancy, who I knew for about 9 years, but had only been dating for about 1 year. All was good. She had her dream engagement ring, we had a nice house together, both had steady jobs, and the wedding plans were coming along nicely. About 2 months prior to the wedding, we found out we were going to have a baby. Such happiness had never been felt before. Wedding plans continued, and the big day was only 28 days away. Then I come home from work and find that Nancy isn't home. I called her to see if she got held up at work and to see what time she might be home. But Nancy wasn't at work. She was at her grandmother's house in another state. Nancy calmly told me that she no longer wanted to get married and that she was not coming home. Complete and utter shock. What in the duck just happened? I tried to call her back. Her phone is off. I call her grandmother. No answer. What about the wedding? What about our baby? What about everything? No answer, no contact for 3 days. No clues. Nothing. On day 4, Nancy shows up and starts packing her stuff. She won't say a word to me. Nothing. She leaves and sends me an email saying that she can't be with me again. No reason. I began calling her sister and asking what happened. Her sister tells me that she has no idea, but gives me their mom's phone number. Strange. Nancy said her mom was out of the picture because she was abusive when she drank. Nevertheless, I call mom. Mom tells me that I'm lucky number 3 who has fallen for this trap. Nancy cut mom out of her life so mom couldn't ruin Nancy's game of milking guys for money and resources. Nancy has been pregnant twice before and had miscarriages. She milked guys for everything she could before running off to super Christian grandma's house and claiming abuse so grandma will take her in until the dust settles and she can do it again. What? Duck? Weeks go by and still no contact with Nancy. I've lost 20 pounds and have been counseled at my job for poor work performance. My family is mad as a duck. Family members lost money on travel plans to the wedding and I'm mortified. I lost all of the deposits on everything for the wedding. Since it was less than 30 days before it was cancelled. I'm piss broke. I check our joint bank account. Negative $2,000, duck. Guess I won't be paying the mortgage. I start to get it together and my sadness turns to rage. I had so much anger inside of me, I actually had to scale it back a bit, or I might have gone to prison. A month and a half after the split, I got a text. I had a miscarriage. You stressed me out too much, and my daughter is dead now. Daughter? I was having a daughter. You're blaming me for this? That's it. I'm going to unalive this witch. No, wait. Take this witch apart at the seams. A few days of drinking get me over the hump of sadness again. Back to rage. Let's do this. Most of Nancy's stuff was still at my house. I start to pack it all up and in order to get rid of it somehow. But I stumbled upon a few things. Her resume and her checkbook to her personal bank account. I read her resume. It's all BS, like everything else. I hop on the computer, create a new Yahoo email address, and send a long letter to her corporate office, telling them line by line how it's all lies. Feels good. Next was Operation Checkbook. I sign her name on every check and rip them all out of the book. I drive 30 minutes to the sketchiest part of town and leave them on a sidewalk in front of an AM/PM. Too much good stuff. I go back home and throw out all of her stuff. Screw it. Sue me, witch. Accept her laptop. I keep that shot. Nancy calls. I don't answer. Voicemail says she got laid off due to cutbacks. I know that's not true. Duck. Yeah. 2 more weeks go by and letters from some district attorney's bad check restitution program begin to trickle in the mail. Duck. Yeah. Oh, in the registration renewal for her car. Shred all that shot. Oh, while I'm at it, I might as well put a change of address in for her at the post office. Where to? The temporary shelter for the homeless. Sounds good. I hear through a mutual friend that since Nancy is out of work now, she's staying with friends and supported financially by super Christian grandma. Duck that. I hop on her laptop and make a new Yahoo email address that is only 1 number different from Nancy's real email. I emailed super Christian grandma a video of Nancy pleasing herself that I had saved. I titled the email, "Hey grandma, check out this video I took of my job. I hope I uploaded it right. Duck ya emails, you are disgusting. I hope your new job pays well because I'm not supporting you if you act like that. Oh damn. 2 for 1 deal. Embarrassment and financial distress noise. Weeks go by and I get a call from the rental center. What the F? Oh, they want all of Nancy's furniture back? I had no idea it was rent to own stuff. I tell them I don't have it, they argue and say she says I have it. I stick to my guns and tell them I do not have it and I don't know where it is. That night I burned it all in the yard. Then I find out that Nancy has a new job. And as I'm planning my next move, I hear great news. Nancy has been arrested and is in jail for embezzlement. Apparently she had some money problems and stole $5,000 out of petty cash and got busted. Oh God, this is great. She ducked herself. Months go by with no updates. And then I heard from a friend that she was bailed out of jail by grandma after only a few days and ended up taking a plea bargain for a felony conviction in 3 years of probation along with restitution. I hang my hat and call it a day. I have gotten my revenge. I'll leave it there. Time to move on. A couple months later, the phone rings. It's a repo company looking for info on where Nancy is because they're trying to repossess her car. Okay. One last nail in the coffin. I make a few calls and find the address where she's staying. I call the repo company back and gave them the info. They thank me and say I'm eligible for a $100 reward if they get the car back. No, thanks. This one's on me. Nancy is now a felon, jobless, and a single mom of a kid she recently had from some random guy. She lives in an apartment with her brother and his girlfriend. I'm happily married with a beautiful daughter and a great life. Yesterday I got a Facebook message from Nancy. Congrats on the marriage and daughter. I'm glad you're happy, I replied. Go duck yourself. She blocked me. Life is good. Sometimes taking the low road heals the soul.
My bratty stepdaughter ran away from home because we are horrible parents. I met my husband Chris a few years ago. I met his stepdaughter Kate a year later when we got married and moved in. Obviously it was an adjustment. His family suddenly tripled in size due to my 4 teenage kids, and I was happy as my kids suddenly had a father figure again. However, I never really liked Kate and made that obvious, refusing to cook for her sometimes or not giving her an allowance. I did this because in my eyes she was spoiled and her dad gave her too much. He disagreed with me initially but eventually gave in to my demands. Yesterday, Kate ran away. She told us where she was before we even knew that she was missing. She is with family and safe. Nonetheless, both my husband and I are beyond ticked off at this stunt. Chris wants to drive up and bring her home immediately. I completely disagree. I think we ought to take a beat and reflect on the email she sent before taking any action that will cause further damage. The email was basically a list of complaints Kate had about our style of parenting towards her. The email stated that she lacks privacy as she now has to share a room with my daughter while my son gets his own room. Apparently my kids are always touching her stuff and have zero respect for her space. She can't think in this house because my kids are too extroverted and noisy. The lack of privacy and my daughter having her best friends there all the time are affecting her ability to code in silence how she liked to. My kids are bullies and lay hands on her. Her father doesn't spend time with her anymore. We keep forcing her to participate in things she doesn't want to because my kids want to do it. She doesn't have a voice in our home anymore. She's angry that I don't cook for her when I cook for everyone else. I guess I see where she is coming from, but I disagree with some things. She is 16 and can cook for herself, for example, and as far as the noise goes, I think boys will be boys, as mine can be quite rowdy. My husband has learned to accept this. Why can't she? There are some things that we just can't change. Do we go into debt and sell this house so we can buy a bigger house when the kids start going off to college in 2 years? My kids live here too. Are they not supposed to run and play? Is my daughter not supposed to have friends over? I also want to point out that I believe that she ran away to make a point, rather than with the intent to stay gone. Kate could have gone to her maternal grandparents' house. They're closer, and she knows that they would fight tooth and nail to keep her. Instead she went to Chris's family. I believe this is an indication that she wants to come home, she just wants things fixed. My 34-year-old husband is obsessed with our boss's 20-year-old daughter. My husband and I work at a small firm. During the work time, our boss would occasionally bring his then teenage daughter to work. She should have been around 15 when we first met her, and had her interact with the employees and stuff to show her what we were doing, how things work, etc. Fast forward to January of this year, the boss brought her in, officially, letting us know that she will be taking over a good deal of his work, overlooking things. We were initially hesitant, considering she was so young, turned 20 this year, but ultimately, she wasn't taking over, more so learning to handle the business while the boss managed other work. It helped that she herself was also very keen on cooperating and taking advice, often holding meetings to discuss things and making sure she herself is the last to leave work almost every time. It's been an overall good development in that regard. The issue started initially a few months after she started. She would occasionally hold office events, just to lighten the mood, and this earned her a lot of praise, from all of us, since it's not something the old boss would have time to look into. We were all talking about her, so it didn't feel too weird at first when my husband joined in on the praising. How impressive it is, she's so young but so mature, how she's been a breath of fresh air in the office, everyone's so motivated to work cause of her, etc. With hindsight, it seems like that was just his in on talking about her with me in general. Every now and then, he'd start singing her praises, when we're at home, a huge talking point always being how she's so mature for her age and understanding, even pointing out how we weren't at that age. I didn't take it much to heart, until one time I joked that it was fine if he was immature at times, and that I would love him regardless, and his response was something along the lines of, "Well, you were too, unlike her." I think that was the first time I felt a bit bad, because it felt like he actually was just comparing me to her now. But I tried not to think too much about it. This slowly spiraled too, going from talking about her maturity to looks, how she can still look good while being so busy with studies and work, how she, and I quote, was definitely more gifted compared to other girls. Once, out of insecurity, I asked if he thought she was prettier than me. He gave me an, "Of course you're attractive to me, but objectively, like, not considering my attraction to you, she is prettier." This messed with me for a while, and we ended up having a fight, where I essentially banned him from bringing her up with me, if it's not work-related. Also adding to it, was the fact that he started taking extra work every now and then, and working overtime, and while I initially thought it was to just earn extra money, I later found out it was simply because he knew she usually heads home late too, usually after most if not all office employees left. Fast forward to a few days back, the weekend happened. My husband was out with his friends, and my laptop was being repaired, so I used his laptop, without his permission. I had put some videos on autopay as background noise as I did some work. When I opened his PC folder and on the left quick access bar, there was a folder with our boss's daughter's name. I had to click it, and when I did, I actively couldn't believe what I was seeing. A folder of over 1K plus pictures of her, screenshots from Instagram and other apps, any and every picture he could find of her, and an insane number of pictures just taken without her consent, with either a hidden camera or his phone at the office. It all ranged from her just sitting or working, to some from a high enough angle to get cleavage or down blouse, and even a few under the table shots. This creeped me out, beyond anything, since it was almost impossible to place my husband, who I have always known as the sweetest guy, for the 6 years we have been married, as someone who would do something like this. I was shocked and just didn't really know how to react. If I should feel disgusted or sad, angry, I don't know. But then, it got worse. I used a search to look up her name on his laptop and found something that basically turned any form of sorrow or sadness I would have felt into just pure disgust. He basically had a folder poorly hidden deep in a number of folders, just full of Photoshop pictures of her, some solo, some with him, some with other members of the office, and some just absolutely vile and disgusting. I was furious, but I also didn't want him to know yet. So I acted normal that night, and then the next day, I called up my cousin, asked if she needed help with her pregnancy, and used that as an excuse to move in and help her for a bit. I have talked to my husband, though limited, mostly through text and occasionally at work, but for the last 4 days, I have been living with my cousin. Honestly, I am disgusted, but I also don't know what to do exactly. I feel a mixture of being cheated on, which, I know he didn't do anything with her, but still, I can't explain it. But on top of that, I feel disgusted that my husband was this sort of a man. What should I do?
My son thinks I don't like him, which isn't true. I first met my bio son 8 months ago. I knew of his existence and I knew that he was adopted when he was 3, but I never met him before him finding me. He's a bright kid, talks your head off, real creative, and real optimistic. Me on the other hand, not so much. I was just like that the first half of my life, but stuff hit the fan. Spent years locked up, and now I'm here. I'm currently renovating my house on my own, and he comes every day. I kept telling him in the beginning that he doesn't have to come and help, but he didn't listen. After a while it became the norm. I gotta admit, it feels nice. His company, him actually talking to me. Truth is, I don't have many people around me, and him coming over feels nice. I am really bad at talking about difficult moments. I never talk about these things with other people. When I do talk about them, I imagine talking to myself, revisiting the situation because it's easier that way. A few days ago he asked a question. I answered with honesty, but I admit it was harsh. I was just talking without thinking and he left a while later, but I didn't notice anything was off. He skipped coming the next 2 days, and then he dropped by earlier today to let me know that he'll quit bothering me and said that I didn't like him. He left as quick as he came. This isn't true. I care about him, I really do, and I wish that I didn't have a hard way of showing it. Was I wary about everything at first? Yes, but I'm glad he's in my life now. I would like to express this, without difficulty, any methods would help. He asked me if I thought if this could have all worked out if I wasn't in prison. I said no, and explained that I would have most likely still been dealing. His mom being in high school wouldn't have changed, she probably would have still became an addict, and it just wouldn't have been good. Then I said his mom should have just listened to me, when I told her she was in no position to have a baby. What I meant by the no position to have a baby comment was that his mom should have placed him with her aunt that was willing to take him in. Baby garbage didn't cross my mind because she was 7 months when she told me she was pregnant. I didn't mean abortion, I meant adoption. My barely present father adopted a girl at his work. About 2 weeks ago, whilst driving me, 16 male, to school, something he rarely does, my dad, 49 male, started talking about this girl at his new work, stating he had adopted her and he is now her work dad. My relationship with my father needs a chart to fully explain. Literally, I made one, but to sum up, toddler to middle schooler. He used to hit me when I was 2 years old, because I was difficult. He'd shout and punish me for dropping things. He yelled at me multiple times for being sick and throwing up all over myself. He used to nitpick everything about my appearance and bully me with it. He used to slap my butt and encourage my brother William, 17 male, to do that too. This ended when I came out as trans, female to male. That isn't all, but I have a headache and I can't remember all of it right now. When I was about 12, my parents divorced. I remember my father used to do everything to make my brother William and I pick him over our mother, mostly by bringing up my mom's drinking. I also remember both he and my mom would constantly discuss their issues with me, from child abuse to my mother's drinking. I still remember one night where I told him I was too young to be dealing with all this, as I was only 12 at the time, and he told me, "You're not only 12, you're already 12. Which made me think everything happening was normal. I am sorry, I feel like I'm getting sidetracked. My point is, there is a lot of crap regarding my dad. While technically still being in my life, he is barely present. He doesn't pay for anything besides my phone bill, he hasn't attended a parent-teacher conference in years, he has no clue about my friends, he basically doesn't know me. If I do try to talk about the things I love, he usually tells me I talk too much or too loud, and that he doesn't want to hear about whatever book I'm reading. About 3 months ago, I was horribly self-destructive. Nothing felt worth it anymore, and I was very close to breaking my sober streak on self-harm. I didn't, 1 year and going strong. I was so low and all I wanted was my dad to do literally anything. He told me he'd do anything to help me feel better, and I wanted to believe him, but even in a desperate state I knew better. When I got so low I didn't want to leave my room anymore, he wouldn't stop bugging me. Even though he says it is entirely William and I's choice if we are in his house or mom's house, he'll start talking about how horrible of a father he is as soon as I cancel. Saying he can never do anything right and how nothing he does is enough for me, and how I might as well go over with moving boxes. He didn't even know when I went to the crisis service and got emergency therapy. I mean, I told him about it, but he claimed I never did when I brought it up. I feel like I'm getting horribly sidetracked. I'm sorry, my point is, my father has never been truly there for me. In walks this girl, Katie, 21 female. Katie doesn't have a great life, which I know because my dad told me, which he knows because he asked. I've seen their conversations, typing that is a huge invasion of her privacy for him to show and tell me about them. It is walls upon walls of text of him asking her about her day, and interests, and hobbies, and letting her vent to him, and he is genuinely being a dad to her. He even drove her to an appointment and lended her money. It took me 2 weeks of sitting on this for it to fully sink in how much this freaking hurts. He yelled at me to shut up when I got excited watching Narnia, because I was too loud. I have hearing loss, but when Katie is talking about something, he is super invested and wants to hear more. I just don't understand what I did wrong. I try so hard to get him to show an interest. I mean, I get great grades, not straight A's but B+, which isn't bad in my opinion. I have friends, I try to get him involved in places I go to and I text him, and I ask him about his day, and I just don't understand why he can be this great father figure to Katie and not to me. Don't get me wrong, I am so glad Katie has someone, because I know what it's like to have nobody, but for Christ's sake I want my dad. Sorry for the rambling, I just had to vent somewhere. Stiff me on overtime? Q and almost half a decade of revenge. This happened in the early 2000s when I joined a startup. We agreed on a salary and no paid overtime and an evaluation in 3 months and then annually. Standard stuff mostly. It was a very mediocre salary for the work, but I really liked work itself, which was extremely interesting and challenging. For me, even if the finances were so-so, I felt I'd learn a lot of skills which would be useful in the future. After 3 years and having 10 decent clients and a bunch of clients trialing and money rolling in, the talk turned to back pay and paid overtime plus compensating for past overtime. At that point, around $50,000 in OT had been accrued, which is a lot. Legally it couldn't be back pay, so the talk was always of a discretionary bonus. Now at this point, everyone is okay with this, myself included. And this was discussed in writing, via company emails too, so I felt secure and that no bad will was in play. I felt the company should be able to afford the payment. Equally, I'd happily settle for equity at a discount, which is legally possible there, if cash flow was an issue. The discussions about back pay, possible equity and now started to drag on and I was getting irked by this. In the end, I was made an offer of equity which meant the company valuation was far beyond anything reasonable, in the hundreds of millions, and I'd get a minuscule stake, less than 0.01% of a company with 9 employees and a projected annual turnover of around 2 million. It was a FU of sorts to stiff me out of money, and I didn't want to take that lying down. To say I was furious was an understatement. Anyway, the day he made that offer I handed in my resignation. This sent the CTO into panic mode because the CEO had refused an updated contract and I was still on a 1-month notice period, plus I had a lot of untaken paid leave. Basically it meant I was walking out right then and there. So, off I went that very same day, to the shock and surprise of everyone, I guess. The next day I sent an official, registered, letter requesting my overtime/back pay and received a negative response, which I followed up with another, detailed, demand. This was also rejected because the bonus was discretionary and there is no overtime. However, I'd been seeking legal advice and I understood that they don't have a leg to stand on if I'm willing to pay for an attorney. As the liability in such matters is firmly and 100% on the employer, I was willing. You need to understand that going to a lawyer was very rare in those parts back then, so companies didn't generally expect this outcome. Things have since changed. When going through the applicable laws with the attorney, I noticed there is a limitation of 7 years. So, while my attorney was laying out what to do in order to get me my money in a little as a few weeks, I just asked him, what if we wait until it's 6 years and 11 months after the transgression and then file, demanding interest? I wanted this because the law stated that back pay is due at a 9% APR above the base rate, 3.25% at that time, accrued daily, for every day past the due date. We're looking at 12 to 12.5% compound daily April. The risk is that the company folds in that time, but I decided to take that risk. I sent one final letter stating that I expect all the owed and accrued amounts to date to be paid immediately. Of course, nothing happened. For the next few years life rolled on. The company did grow and become a known player in the area. When the time came, I found an attorney and started the case. We had copies of all the communications, copies of the registered letters and responses. The back pay demanded now, including interest, was $112,000. What I didn't know was that in addition to this that there are fixed penalties for each instruction to perform uncompensated overtime. The total demand was something like $135,000. To say that the CEO, who was still CEO, lost his poop would be an understatement. I got a very verbally abusive phone call which I dutifully recorded, as it wasn't completely unexpected, and was added to the filing. The CEO fought, or tried to, but when the judge heard the phone call, he took an immediate dim view. Reading through all the communication just put more nails in the defense's coffin. The judge just ruled and instructed the company to pay immediately and without delay, and also ordered the company to pay all my legal costs. They also got a full audit from the Department of Labor. The company paid up a week later. To add insult to injury, the evening of the court's decision, the CEO apparently got very drunk and crashed his car into another vehicle while drunk. He got a DUI conviction and lost his driving license for half a year, and his insurance refused to pay out for the damages to his vehicle, brand new Mercedes S-Class, as he was drunk. All in all, a glorious day. Real life 40-year-old virgins, what's your story? 42-year-old virgin here. I thought I had a date once, it wasn't. Age 17 to 25, I asked some girls/women out. They all just plain out said no except for the one. The last few years of the period, I stupidly started to ask why, and because you was the top answer. Until the one went on in more detail and made me realized what because you meant, and I gave up. I threw myself into my studies, researched anything that interested me, and just read a lot about a lot. Age 25 to 32, I just didn't try. Continued my self-studies. Sure, there were women I would love to ask out. There was even one I did, quite to my own surprise. Of course she said no and then some, but I was still me and they would have said no. I had a demanding/abusive job from age 28 to 30 that took everything from me. I joined a gym at 30. Age 32 now, I lost 97 pounds between age 30 and 32. Took up yoga and running. I think I noticed women noticing me, but I had convinced myself women don't find me attractive, so I had to be imagining things. My workout routine has lessened since then and I have gained back some weight, but thankfully more muscle than fat. I learned in my late 20s that I have a personality type that makes me hard to get to know, which means dating is particularly difficult. It was at this time I thought I was a high-functioning autist. I do have many, but not all, traits of one. I've never been good at social stuff, so I have huge disadvantage in the sociality needed for dating. In the last 5 years or so, I began to wonder if I have social anxiety disorder instead of, or maybe in addition to, autism. And in all this time I've worked overnights, which adds another difficulty in dating. I get the idea that I'm the better than nothing guy, but I don't want to be the last option for someone. I'd rather like a woman who wants to be with me and not has to be with someone. I also don't think it would be fair to burden a woman with my quirks and foibles that I've gotten over the years. Also, the social stigma of being over 40 and never even having a date seems like an obstacle in itself. Today I messed up by buying Nerf guns. So this just happened and I'm still in shock. So I, 24 male, just moved in with my girlfriend, 22 female, into our new apartment. Just for context, me and her are incredibly competitive and are always competing with one another, so on to the story. About a week ago I went to Walmart to pick up some things we needed when I had the idea to buy each of us a one-shot Nerf gun that came with 2 bullets each, 4 in total. I gave my girlfriend her gun and 2 bullets and the battle commenced. Throughout the week we lost and broke 3 of the 4 bullets, so today when we were at Walmart I decided to buy a 70 pack of bullets. Before bed we started a Nerf gun fight. At the end of the fight I went to take a shower and went into the bathroom and got completely undressed. My girlfriend said she needed to come into the bathroom to brush her teeth. I checked her for a Nerf gun and saw that both of her hands and they were empty and she wasn't wearing a shirt, so I let her in. She then pulled out a Nerf gun from between her butt cheeks and aimed at my lower area. I did a spin dodge to avoid getting hit and she fired. This caused her to shoot a Nerf bullet at the tip of my D from about 2 feet away. I am still in pain while typing this. Vicky Karen wants her meal salt-free? I'll make sure you'll regret it. You say you want your meal salt-free? You'll regret that. I invited 6 folks and shortly after the invites were sent I received a call from Sally. Sally, not her real name, advised me that she was now on a salt-free diet due to medical reasons. She advised that at home she cooked without any salt and gave me a speech about how wonderful salt-free life was. I was skeptical and advised her that I would personally find it difficult to give up all salt. Was she sure she wasn't just on a low-sodium diet? Sally advised that unless her dish was salt-free she wouldn't be attending, while telling her no was an option. I'm not that person. I was pissed off at Sally for years of being difficult at the dinner table in restaurants. Trust me, there was always something wrong with her meal, or its preparation, or the flavor, or the waiter, or, with a smile so large you could hear it through the phone, I assured her that her request for salt-free was 100% going to be accommodated. On the dinner night I prepped the meal. Sally was getting the same thing as everything else with one critical difference. All of her food was prepped in separate containers, baked on separate racks, and seasoned with exactly the same flavors sans salt. Dinner time and my guest arrive. I have all of Sally's food plated on white plates. Everyone else gets gray plates. First round, appetizers. Fried calamari with a lemon jalapeno butter sauce. This dish typically has salt in both the batter and the sauce. As Sally couldn't have that, I battered her calamari in salt-free seasonings and flour. Her condiment looked exactly the same but was made with unsalted butter and no added salt. I placed Sally's plate in front of her first and she immediately states she asked for salt-free. I assure her that her dish is salt-free and I made sure to cook her separate and even use a different colored plate to keep it straight. We all sit to talk and enjoy the squid. Sally takes a bite and makes a face. Mine has no flavor. She exclaims. All of my other guests tell Sally it's divine, delicious, best they've had, etc. I smile at Sally and assure her that her dish was flavored exactly as everyone else. The only difference is that she received absolutely no salt. It's at this point that Sally has a moment of clarity. It's painfully obvious on her face. She realizes she can't complain about the lack of salt as she's already told the table about her salt-free life. She also can't claim it tastes terrible if everyone else is raving about the food. She literally looks like she was about to cry at the table. As my guests enjoy their dinner, Sally is slowly doing the toddler plays with her food munch and pushing her calamari around the plate. After a few moments she reaches for the sauce that I made for everyone else. Sally, be careful, the salt-free sauce is in the white bowl. That one has salt. She mumbles something about wanting to taste the difference before literally dumping the bowl on her calamari. She then exclaims how much better it tasted. You and I know that, of course, things taste better with salt. So this drama repeated itself over the main course of honey roasted salmon with pine nuts. I also am no heathen and had both salt and pepper on the table for my guest. I'm not going to judge you for needing more flavor. Here we go. Sally takes a bite of her fish and once again realizes that it has no salt. She reaches for the salt shaker and conversation stops. Another guest asks Sally if she was okay with adding salt to her food. She says that she can occasionally have salt. She proceeds to shower her fish with salt sprinkles. I also baked some cookies for dessert. The dough uses a little salt. I made sure to whip up a separate batch of cookies wrapped to go for her. Salt-free, of course. When I handed her those cookies, the look of defeat that hit her face warmed my heart. Dinner is over. Everyone is happy. Except for Sally. I called her the next week to make sure she was okay as she's consumed sodium at my party. Sally told me her doctor has removed her sodium restrictions and she won't need that accommodation in future meals. On the phone I congratulate her for her good health. When I hang up I laugh until my sides hurt. Salt-free life apparently doesn't taste good when the salt is actually omitted.
My rapist is now roping my daughter. Should I just abandon her? I don't want to be a mother anymore. I got pregnant when I was 17 with my friend Jack, who was 23. He roped me and then SLT shamed me, denied the child was his, and he blocked me. I began the process of adoption. When he was contacted to sign rights over to the adoption agency, he blocked the adoption. Jack contacted me and asked for a prenatal DNA test which confirmed Anna was his child. We moved in together for the remainder of the pregnancy. He was verbally and physically abusive.
You're going to be one of those mothers you see on the news to throw your baby off a bridge or drown them in a bathtub.
When Anna came, we lived separately and I found out that Jack had been consulting with attorneys in the last 3 months of my pregnancy. I offered joint custody but he filed for full custody. 3 years later and the battle for my daughter was still going strong. She had expressed instances where her Jack creeped on her but DCF found it to be unsupported because Anna did not disclose them when interviewed. I lost custody after having full custody for the entirety of my daughter's life. Now I only have supervised visitation due to fear of interference of father-daughter relationship. This entire custody litigation has been traumatic. Jack is relentless. He lives for the fight. This is how he gets his way in life. He exhausts people until they don't want to deal with him anymore and just give him what he wants. I'm in debt because of attorney fees. I believe my daughter is being roped and I can't help her. I have proof of alienation by Jack to Anna. Daddy says you're bad and I don't want to talk to you. The house is bad because Daddy says I don't like it. Sobbing, I'm not allowed to love Mama because Daddy will be so sad. All to which my attorney advises I am not allowed to use in court due to certain laws and how this evidence was obtained. When I do see Anna, she is not herself. She is not the child I worked so hard to raise. I have no more fight in me. I will abandon my daughter. I will not feel regret because I will be free.
Struggling with intense hatred for my own mother. I have a strong dislike for my mother. I find it extremely difficult to have any meaningful conversations with her, whether it's through chat or video calls. I can maintain a civil tone, but I can't bring myself to open up to her. It bothers me how she constantly guilt trips my sister, because she never does the same to me. Perhaps it's because I never asked her for anything, and she wasn't the one who supported my education financially. Moreover, it seems like she's always sad, but she has a different boyfriend each time and often spends the night at guys' houses. Is that proper behavior? She frequently goes out, parties at clubs, and drinks, all while engaging in various extracurricular activities. However, she never provides us, her siblings, with any funds for outings or even a simple meal outside. We always have to rely on our aunts for financial support since our parents aren't around to cover our expenses. It's embarrassing, but, thankfully, our aunts are kind enough to not leave us behind when we eat out. It's irritating how she constantly self-pities, but it's just her way. She never truly checks up on us with genuine concern. The conversations always end up with blame or money matters. Now, she has lost her job and doesn't have any emergency funds, despite spending many years working abroad. She didn't prepare for situations like these, but she still has money for happy hour and other club activities. And now, she expects us, her 26-year-old working siblings, to financially support her. On top of that, she often belittles my job, saying that it's easy as long as I speak English. However, she never says the same thing to my brother, as if calculating numbers is a trivial task. She expects me to contribute to the expenses with a job that she looks down upon? While I have no problem sharing expenses, I don't want to do her any favors. I genuinely despise her. I hate her behavior and her decisions, as if my siblings aren't affected by what she does. It frustrates me that she fails to realize the immense emotional trauma she has caused, even though we've discussed it with her. I hate that I didn't have a loving and caring mother while growing up. Even my brother wonders if our relationship with her can be repaired, and my answer is always no. I suppose she will just be my mother on paper. It hurts that I hate her, but I can't help but feel this way. Ever fool around with your coworker? Hey Reddit. I find myself in an unexpected situation, and I never thought I would be posting about it. Generally, I'm cautious and careful when it comes to my actions and decisions. The fact that I'm here, seeking advice, shows that I'm unsure about what to do next. To get to the point, I'm feeling lost. Logically, I know what needs to be done, but emotionally, I'm struggling to figure it out. Here's what happened. I'm 17, and I had a spontaneous encounter with my 18-year-old coworker in the back of his car. We both consented, and it happened after some unexpected cuddling. Surprisingly, everything seemed fine between us afterward, and we even laughed about it when he dropped me off at home. For a day or two, I couldn't help but smile and laugh whenever I recalled that night. It felt like an exhilarating experience, especially since I had never engaged in anything remotely intimate before. I had been in a previous relationship with my best friend throughout high school. However, despite being together for the entire duration, our level of intimacy never surpassed holding hands. We were both content and comfortable with the boundaries we set. Kissing or going further never seemed necessary or lacking in our connection. Now, with my coworker, he admitted that he liked me, expressing romantic interest the night before we hooked up. We've been having long conversations after work, and I must admit I found him attractive too. He meets my ideal physical and personality preferences. However, during most of the time I've known him, I've been questioning whether my attraction to him is romantic or purely platonic. Yes, I like him, but I'm unsure about the depth of my feelings and what he desires from me. He's kind, caring, and enjoyable to be around, but I can't determine if it's the kind of attraction he expects. This brings me to my current dilemma. Despite finding him physically appealing and our mutual consent to our encounter, I can't shake off the guilt I feel about it. Lately, I've noticed that he senses something is off with me at work. I don't want him to believe he's the issue when it's really not about him at all. I understand that I should talk to him honestly about my emotions, but I'm just not ready to have that conversation yet. Navigating the realm of romance and intimate attraction has placed me in an uncomfortable position. It's challenging for me personally because it takes a significant amount of time to develop romantic feelings for someone. Exploring intimate attraction is uncharted territory for me. Now that I've taken that step with someone, I'm left feeling uncertain and unsure about how to process everything. At times, I even regret it and wish things could go back to normal, back to before I made the decision to go beyond cuddling with him. I dislike this awkwardness I've created within myself. I don't know what the best course of action is, although I realize I need to communicate my thoughts and feelings with him. It's just that I'm scared. Additionally, if by any chance he comes across this post and realizes it's about him before I have the chance to talk to him, I'm concerned about how it might impact our relationship, especially with how popular Reddit stories on TikTok can become. I appreciate any advice or guidance you can provide.
My racist brother called my black husband the N-word. So my husband beat the poop out of him and I cut him off of my life. I have been married to my husband Micah for almost 9 months and he has always been a patient and happy person. But everything went south last Saturday night. Very big detail, Micah is black. My family and I are extremely white. They have no problem with me dating or even marrying him, but I have a younger brother, Wesley, who doesn't really like the idea. My brother has always been a little racist but never enough where it was taken literally. That's why I never brought Micah around him, because Wes and his friends have a very bad habit of saying the N-word. Micah knew about Wesley's habit and said as long as he didn't say it to or around him, he didn't care. Fast forward to last Saturday night, my parents invited us to dinner to celebrate my cousin's pregnancy. It was at my uncle's house and all the kids were upstairs while the adults were downstairs. Of course, there were heavy drinks and my brother ended up getting a little drunk. Micah got up from his seat and went to get something to drink when my brother purposely bumped into him. Nakaa said excuse me, but Wes cut him off midway and said, "Watch your step, dumbass N." Everyone was taken aback by his disrespect and Nakaa lost it. He started punching my brother even when he started screaming and bleeding. Usually, I would stop Nakaa, but in this situation my brother definitely deserved it. My dad and my uncle spent 5 minutes trying to pull my Nakaa off. When Nakaa finally stopped, he kicked my brother one last time and then left. Everybody started babying my brother even though they said they didn't feel bad for him. When I saw Wesley's face, it was red, bloody, and extremely swollen. He can't even talk.
What is the most infuriating case of double standards you've come across? When I was a school nurse, I was always alone with whatever children needed assistance. Even after I would ask for help, new male school nurse started. All of a sudden 3 other people are available just to watch him. I felt terrible for the guy, but literally no one trusted him with the diabetic kid or the kid with the trachea alone. Oh, he can't be alone. But me, a woman, was never questioned. Double standards abound. When a mom takes her kids to the park, nobody cares. When a dad takes his kids to the park, everyone stares and asks the kids where their mom is or if they are safe. Makes me angry. Had an opportunity to go to Montreal on a work trip. It was supposed to be a reward for those employees who had just finished a major project. My boss calls me into her office and tells me she knows I played the biggest role in the project on the team, but that she's sending our female summer student, who hardly touched the project, instead because we needed to show company diversity at the conference and there were too many males going. Do you ever regret being the model student in high school? About me, a reflection on missed opportunities growing up in the Bible Belt, education was not highly regarded. My childhood seemed picture perfect, just like those families in 70s TV shows. However, there was more to my story behind closed doors. My dad hailed from rural Texas, a place that wasn't ideal to live in during the 70s. Thankfully, his dad won custody and moved him to the suburbs, where he could focus on his studies. Dad excelled academically, becoming the salutatorian in his class and pursuing a bachelor's and master's degree in college. As a child, I faced the pressure to excel from the very beginning. Summer breaks meant studying English and math since my grades suffered due to my rough home environment and excessive daydreaming. I consistently received low scores and sought extra assistance from the school counselor. By middle school, I was attending before and after school tutorials. My routine involved waking up early, navigating the sprawling school campus, and staying until 4 p.m. While my grades improved from the 60s and 70s, my parents pushed me to attend summer school against my will in order to gain admission to a high school STEM program. This forced me to accelerate my math education, taking 7th grade math during my 7th grade year. Entering high school, I reluctantly joined the STEM program as per my dad's wishes. Tutorials became a constant presence in my life. My parents meticulously monitored my grades online, leaving me feeling burned out from constant pressure. Even when I achieved straight A's, my dad kept pushing for perfection, essentially living his life vicariously through my sister and me. Despite my reluctance, I clung to the arts rather than STEM. I found solace in drawing, painting, and sculpting, rather than the rigorous subjects like AP Biology, AP Chemistry, and AP Physics. It wasn't until my junior year that a new health teacher, who replaced the previous one who sadly passed away, inspired me to pursue a career as a medical illustrator. Throughout my high school years, I fantasized about skipping classes due to the immense pressure from my parents. While hanging out with my now ex-boyfriend after school, my mom would jokingly accuse me of avoiding my responsibilities. Those accusations weighed heavily on me, contributing to my low self-esteem and history of bullying. Yet, those stolen moments with my boyfriend brought me the only sense of happiness and calm during those turbulent years. I battled severe depression, anxiety, frequent burnouts, and imposter syndrome. Trapped by my dad's undiagnosed narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, and his incessant need to live through me, I struggled to cope. Though I used to rely on maladaptive daydreaming as a means of escape, the demands of my life left me no time to indulge in such distractions. Graduation day arrived, but I felt no sense of accomplishment. Despite the awards and accolades I received, including my school diploma, magna cum laude ribbon, NHS ribbon, silver ribbon, and various honors from the high school STEM program, I still didn't feel fulfilled. The only thing I eagerly anticipated was taking a gap year to recharge. Interestingly, I found myself both annoyed by and drawn to the hot Cheeto girls, popular girls in school. I envied their carefree attitudes, even though my low self-esteem prevented me from truly embracing their confidence. I despised couples making out in hidden staircases and laughed at the cliché stories of couples having illicit encounters in the woods. But deep down, I longed to experience those daring, intimate moments myself. Regrettably, my fear of vulnerability and past experiences with bullying kept me from showing any affection in public. I wished I could cast aside others' opinions, indulge in public displays of affection with my ex-boyfriend, and even risk getting caught or being stared at by others. Furthermore, I wished I had cared less about my parents' expectations and hung out with a different crowd. I had the opportunity, as I was friends with a kid who set off fireworks in the school bathroom and knew someone who skipped German class for a bathroom rendezvous. Having a rebellious story or not investing all my time and energy into a relationship seemed like experiences I missed out on due to parental pressures and societal expectations. I know this reflection may seem out of place, but I yearn to explore the immature and regrettable things I missed during my high school years. I am sorrowful to admit that my childhood and teenage years were robbed from me, all because my parents sought to mold me into an ideal student. If they really desired an academically elite school with top grades for me, they should have placed me in a private Christian school. It's disheartening to realize that I never had the chance to embrace the craziness and immaturity that comes with being a teenager. Once this gap year concludes, I intend to indulge in the immature and regrettable experiences that my teenage self should have enjoyed. I long for the freedom to make mistakes and act like a juvenile delinquent, even if only for a short time.
Today I effed up by giving my brother the bees and flowers talk. I, 22F, have always been close with my siblings. I'm the eldest of 12 siblings, both mom and dad's side. I'm their only child and they've had children with other people after. The second eldest, my brother, just turned 16, and I caught him watching adult films on my laptop. I don't want to delve into the kind of adult films that it was, but it was sketchy. Anyway, I know he hasn't had a girlfriend yet, since I consider myself close to him and I sure thought he felt the same way. 2 weeks ago, to save him the embarrassment from letting my mom and stepdad know, I decided to give him the intimacy talk myself, especially reminding him about consent and using a condom no matter what. I told him he could ask me questions if he had any in the future. Now, he's asking me how he should pleasure a girl or how to make a girl orgasm. I've answered as matter-of-factly as I can, but friends have told me to stop and that it can fuel something else. I think they're just being disgusting to think that, and honestly, I just want to be a good sister. Now today the implication of that are that my brother apparently thought that me being a good sister was free rein for him to think of me in a not-so-familial level. I never realized being a good older sister would have me end up this way. So here's what happened after the talk. I thought all's well that ends well. At first he was secretive about it, until I found out the girl he got into a relationship with had the same name as me. If that wasn't weird enough, we both had glasses, too. I thought it was just a funny coincidence at first. My friends were the ones who pointed out a few other similarities, but for me at that time, it just meant that my brother thought of me as a good older sister, so he's modeling his ideal girl? I don't know why I was making excuses really. Then they broke up and he had 2 more girlfriends after. My friends kept pointing out other similarities I had with those girls, too, but again I didn't think much of it. Until yesterday. Another thing that happened in the past year was that my brother grew taller than me. He was slightly smaller than me before, but now my forehead just sits right above his shoulder when we stand up. For family photos recently, he liked hugging me from behind and he kept asking me to rest my head on his shoulders. It was my stepdad's birthday yesterday and after a family photo, he kissed me on the top of my head. I felt cold for a moment, but he just smiled at me. I was beginning to feel nervous for some reason, but I ignored it. After lunchtime he offered to drive me to Dad's place as I live with my dad when I have university classes, because it's nearer, and my PC is over there. Anyway, my brother stopped the car near a Krispy Kreme and told me to order his treat. He looked at me and smiled, and that's when I started to feel genuinely scared. Because I saw the way he looked at me, and that's no way to look at your sister. I never considered myself stupid or dense, but I didn't know it would go this far without me realizing. I know we didn't live together for the first decade of my life, but we're half siblings. We came out of the same womb? Even if our fathers are different and we have different surnames, I always thought it was fine and that I raised them to think of me as their big sister. Now everything is flashing to me. All those times he told me that my stepdad's last name would fit better with my first names as it starts with the same letter. Or all those videos he sent me of siblings and dating and him as long me if ever we got on those videos what people would think. Even all those times he kept intimidating my exes, we all thought he was being a cute brother for God's sake. I feel like a failure as a sister and a child. I feel guilty like I've led this to happen when I know logically that I didn't. He's been texting me innocently, asking me what I'm doing, but I'm now so scared to respond. I feel like anything I do will make this blow out of proportion. I don't want to tell our mom, or either of our dads. I get along great with my stepdad and I don't want to even think about what he'll think considering he's a policeman. I've never felt this stupid.
Am I the a-hole for blaming my dad for my girlfriend's father's dislike of me? I have known my girlfriend since we were toddlers, thanks to our dads becoming good friends. Her dad came to this country in the 90s to work and made many connections, one of them being my dad. Eventually, he returned to China to marry my girlfriend's mom and brought her back with him. It's quite an inspiring story. As we grew up together, our dads would often joke about us getting married someday. However, it wasn't until we started attending middle school and high school together, after going to separate elementary schools, that we truly became close. We officially started dating at the age of 14. Initially, my girlfriend's dad became distant, which I expected as I was dating his daughter. But my girlfriend assured me that he would warm up to me in a couple of years. He did, until recently. After high school graduation, my girlfriend moved in with my family since our place was closer to the university. It was around this time that her dad started acting cold towards me again. I assumed it was because I took his daughter away, but my girlfriend's mom revealed something unsettling. Apparently, my dad had been making inappropriate and intimate comments about me to her dad. I confronted my dad about these comments, and he admitted to making them. He said things like how my girlfriend and I engage in intimate acts or how we don't wear clothes in the bedroom. I told him that he should tone it down and maybe avoid such discussions altogether. But he brushed it off, claiming that they were just jokes. I tried explaining that I want her dad to like me, especially if we are going to be together in the future, and no father wants to hear about his daughter's intimacy life. However, my dad accused me of overreacting and called me a jerk. Am I the one in the wrong here? Edit. I would like to clarify that when I mentioned her dad becoming cold after she moved in with me, it wasn't immediate. There were sweet moments during a family vacation, including a one-on-one conversation with her dad. It was only sometime after that experience that he began to act distant. I was uninformed that my ex-in-laws used my lake house for their son's engagement party and explicitly telling people that they have uninvited me. So I got the cops escorted them off of my property. My husband and I were together for 10 years and married for 7 before he unexpectedly died last year. Before and throughout our marriage, his parents never really liked me. I think it was because he was bi, and I robbed them of their chance for him to marry a woman and have children. They would often tell my partner, "Your relationship isn't real love." Despite how they felt about me, I was always cordial to them and allowed them to use my 2 lake houses whenever they wanted. My parents owned the first lake house since before my brothers and I were born. My brothers and I did purchase the second lake house when the original owner decided to sell. The houses are right beside each other and perfect for large family gatherings. During our time together, my husband's family celebrated holidays and extended weekends at the houses, and it was never an issue because I was at almost every getaway. Recently, my husband's youngest brother got engaged. I knew his family would be throwing him and his fiancée a party as they did for all of their kids, except for my husband and me. I also expected an invitation because I was incredibly friendly with the youngest brother, who had gone to many sporting events and concerts with him, but no one ever mentioned anything about a party. And when I finally asked the parents, I was told they weren't doing anything significant. Fast forward to last Monday, and I got a text from one of the neighbors at the lake asking if I'd be joining the family for the party. I came to find out that the whole family was at the lake houses with guests for that entire weekend to celebrate the engagement. At first, I wasn't bothered by not being there, but then I got another text from the neighbor one night telling me that my mother-in-law drunkenly admitted that I wasn't invited. I was pissed, so I drove over an hour to town with the paperwork listing my brothers and me as owners, showed the sheriff the text message stating I wasn't invited, and told them I wanted everyone off the properties. The sheriff and some deputies escorted me to the houses to shut the party down. The music and laughter from the party faded away as we got closer. People looked surprised and confused when they saw us coming. The sheriff entered the party to shut it down, telling the guests that the owner wanted everyone gone. Mom and dad-in-law threw a fit, and that's when the sheriff arrested them for public intoxication. The youngest brother is mad at me, but his fiancée is on my side. In addition, there's always been a hidden lockbox with keys. I don't know if anyone has ever had copies made, but I paid the neighbor's husband to change all the locks on both houses to lock the garage doors and disable the door opener. I had to get back home because I had a cat and dog to look after. Otherwise, I would have changed everything myself. I yelled at some parents in a park until the police came. I remember this one time when I was at the park. It was a beautiful day and I was enjoying some alone time, just sitting on the grass and reading a book. Suddenly, I heard screaming and shouting. I looked up and saw some parents yelling at their poor child. My blood boiled when I saw what was going on. The parents were berating the child for not being able to play properly and were even resorting to physical violence. Something inside me snapped and I couldn't take it anymore. Without even thinking, I stood up and yelled at those parents to stop what they were doing. I told them that what they were doing was wrong and that they needed to be ashamed of themselves. They didn't take kindly to my outburst and started hurling insults at me. But I didn't back down. I stood my ground and continued to yell at them until the police arrived. It was a scary experience, but I felt like I had to do something to help that poor child. Looking back on that day, I'm proud of myself for standing up for what I believe in. I'm glad that I was able to make a difference, even if it was just for one child in a park. It's all too easy for people to turn a blind eye to abuse, but not me. I was determined to do whatever I could to make the world a better place for all children. So I decided to take my fight against injustice one step further. I started speaking out against child abuse in my community and even organized events to raise awareness about the issue. I was surprised to find out that I wasn't alone in my efforts. Many people in my community were willing to help out and join my cause. We had a strong network of supporters and we were determined to make a difference. But then one day, I was walking home and saw my schoolmate Josh, who used to bully me, stealing a bicycle. I watched him doing it so I could report him, but some other guys who were walking by must have thought I was the thief because the next minute I had 2 guys jump me and beat the hell out of me. And as I lay there helplessly, I saw Josh riding off on the bike with a smirk on his face. It was a harsh reality check for me. Sometimes doing the right thing comes at a great cost. But I'm not giving up. I'll continue to fight for what's right, no matter what the consequences may be. Who knows what kind of trouble Josh will get into next time. But I'll be ready for him. I'm determined to make sure he never gets away with his crimes. I'm going to make sure that justice is served, no matter what. Update 2. My cat is completely transfixed by a nondescript point on my wall, to the point of not eating or sleeping. So at this point we've determined that Tucker is probably fine, but if anyone is still interested, I've been poking around my house all day to try and find some sort of access to this alternate basement. I'm posting here because I really don't have anybody else to tell about it and my baseline anxiety at this point is somewhat high. After extensive investigation of the dining side basement, I couldn't find anything that looks like an access to the other side of the wall to where the coal chute leads. From here I began to investigate the living room. The floor of the living room is hardwood, so I began to tamp around with the butt end of a broom. I read online that often these old basements would have vent access to higher floors, so I was looking for some sort of hollow or resonant area. Sure enough, behind my TV, basically flanking the coal chute, I found a resonant area with the broom. Seeing as the resonant area was directly behind the coal chute, I reasoned that there was a high chance it was correlated. At this point my wall was destroyed, and I don't particularly give a crap about beating this house up, so I decided to try and carefully pull up a small area of the floor. The flooring is older and it was easier to get a pry bar underneath one of the panels and expose an area. Sure enough, just like I read online, there is an old wrought iron grate set into what appears to be an original stone floor here, about a foot beneath the hardwood. The grate is super rusted and weathered into its stone housing. It will be hard to remove. It smells very strongly of must, old wet rock, and fire, like the extremely dank 3 days old bonfire smell. I assume this may be centuries old coal residue or wood stove refuse. I assume there has to be a wood stove down there, or that there was at one point, if there was a coal chute. At this point my wall and floor are completely pulled up and it's getting dark. Tucker has been acting fine, still hanging out in the dining room. I'm having my maid over tonight to break out some scotch and pull up this grate. We'll keep anyone who is interested up to date with our findings.
What's the weirdest thing a guest has done at your house? A co-ed of mine, a very much petite and super straight-laced girl, attended a small party at my place with a few other people from uni. She usually doesn't drink much, but this night began to pick out and eat all the fruit from the self-made fruit punch. If you know anything about fruit punches, the fruit are absolutely soaked with alcohol, way more so than the actual punch. We told her, but she continued to snack on the fruits, just a bit slower. She ended up absolutely shit-faced drunk after a short while. A tiny bit later she disappeared into the bathroom. Puking noises were heard, which probably was a good thing considering how drunk she was. After a longer time of silence I knocked to check if she was fine. I got some indiscernible mumbling about maybe she could use some help, but maybe don't come on, but she can't do it alone. Maybe I could give her a frying pan or a spoon or something. I was very confused and told her I would open the door and to make sure she was dressed. When I came she was blushed to the maximum, sitting on the floor. The whole bathtub was full of liquid vomit thinned with water and tons of fruit swimming around. She went on about how she wasn't able to clean the mess up alone. Apparently she had been trying to shovel the whole tub full of vomit into the toilet using her hands the whole time. The shit you do when drunk, lol. The bathtub was clogged up with fruit so it didn't empty. I grabbed some stuff from the kitchen. She unclogged the bathtub with some tools. We filtered out the fruit with a sieve and drained and cleaned the bathtub. Well, mostly me, as she fell asleep on the floor during the process. Vilp. After the bathroom was done I put up my camping bed in my room, grabbed some extra blankets and a small couch pillow and tried to wake her up. She wouldn't. So I carried her over to the bed and made sure she was warm. Put a bucket next to the bed and a small bottle of water. The party went on into the morning hours. When I woke up the next morning, or rather around early afternoon, she was gone. The bed was perfectly made. When I got to the living room it was perfectly clean with no signs of there ever being a party last night. Same for the kitchen, minus a few remaining full bottled and snacks all nearly packed up in Tupperware. There was a written note, well, more of a letter on length, lying on the kitchen table. In her note she explained in length how she was extremely embarrassed by what happened. That she was thankful how I handled the situation and that I remained calm. Also she said that other guys she knows might have tried to take advantage of her drunk state and she was happy I didn't for 1 second try anything. Lastly she said to make up the mess she made she cleaned the kitchen and living room from all the party remains. Also she made breakfast which was in the fridge. Lastly she'd be happy if I didn't contact her for a week or two as she'd be too embarrassed to talk to me anyways. We became really close friends after that happened, but it was surely weird. Both the bathtub full of fruit vomit juice and meticulously cleaning my flat the day after.
Am I the a-hole for refusing to sell the place I bought with stripper money? For several years I was a stripper. I have no shame about what I did, and only quit when I got a better job offer. In the time I worked as a stripper, I intentionally lived as cheaply as possible, crappy little studio flat, living off ramen, wearing old clothes, because my coworkers all told me that they were able to buy their own places on their income, so long as they saved like crazy. Before I retired, I managed to outright buy myself a 3-bedroom flat. I rented out the other rooms for a while, but I got sick of having roommates, so now I have them up online for shorter stays, but not to rent. I met this guy about 18 months ago, and we've been together since. He knows about my employment history, and he said that he has no issue with it, though he did ask me to tell his family the white lie I occasionally use, on my CV and stuff, which is that I was a waitress. A month ago we found out that I'm 2 months pregnant. He says this is great news, and we should move in together. I assumed he'd be moving into my place because he rents his, far smaller 1-bedroom, flat while I own mine, and I have room for a baby's room while he doesn't. Also, I really don't want to leave my flat. It's my flat, I love it. I could see myself living here for the rest of my life, and I don't want to lose the security of owning a flat and have to go back to paying rent or a mortgage each month. However, he then said that he didn't want to move into my place, and said I should sell it and we buy a place together. I said that I like my place, It means a lot to me that I was able to buy it, and it represents years of working my butt off scrimping and saving. He then said that he understands all of that, but we should be living together by the time the baby comes and he didn't want to live in my flat. I asked him why not. It's a great flat, it's central to everything, it's spacious, it's got room for all his stuff, there's a daycare in the building, run/owned by another tenant, and a school 5-minute walk away, the list goes on, and he said that he didn't want to live in a flat that was bought with stripper money. That really pissed me off, and I told him no effing way am I selling my flat and that he never had an issue with my stripper money paying for this flat before now. I said I wasn't giving up the security of owning a home for someone who tries to make me feel ashamed about something I don't feel ashamed of. He said that his point is if I sold the flat then we could get a new place with the money from the sale. I said wouldn't that still be stripper money? And he said that's different, and I asked how. He then said he was going back to his place because I can't talk to you when you're in this state. He's gone back to his flat now and he's texted me saying I'm overreacting and I need to think of this realistically rather than emotionally. He says he wouldn't feel right raising a child in my flat knowing how I purchased it and selling/moving is the best idea of all of us, not to mention the fact he isn't on the deed because it's my place and it would never feel like our place because of this. I feel I might be the a-hole because I get why he might feel like it's just my place and I feel I'm being too rigid in a time we need to work together, plus I spoke to my sister and she sided with him so 2 out of 3 people think I'm in the wrong here. I just found out that my boyfriend is into lolicon. I'm scared to confront him. I just found out my boyfriend is into lolis. We both have a shared interest in anime, but I always noticed that the female characters he liked had a cutesy, innocent charm to them. They had big honkers and butts so I chalked it up to slightly off-putting, but because they were adults it was fine. Last night he let me look at his Instagram with him on my chest. There was so much adult films of small girl characters. Like actual kitties. It made me nauseous, especially when he was smiling and joking about oh now you know I'm a creep. When he realized I was uncomfortable was when he admitted it was gross and weird, but he didn't see anything wrong with it. We had a long, tense conversation about it, but he still didn't see why it was a big deal since it's just drawings. When I asked why he liked it, he said it's about the innocence of youth, the purity, the contradiction. He assured me that this didn't extend to real life since he has a 10-year-old little sister and smaller nieces, and he condemns that kind of thing and people in the lolly community who are like that. I then told him that I was a victim as a kid so hearing him explain why he liked looking at them being violated made me exceptionally nauseous, and he got really quiet, but didn't have a response to it. He said he would delete everything and not look at lolly again because he values me over Jack material, and doesn't want to make me uncomfortable. But he still believes there's nothing wrong with it. I think he made it clear that he would continue on if I didn't ask him to stop. Or even if he broke up. I feel defeated in trying to change his mind because he's so rooted in the opinion that liking lolicon is harmless. I agreed to continue with the relationship if he did delete everything and never looked at it again, but I'm still so torn. He's genuinely the best guy I've been with and we're perfect for each other. It's just shaken me that someone so caring and attentive and genuine is into something so vile. Edit, we met at the restaurant and it was awkward and tense. I was so nervous that I decided to talk to him in the car because I didn't want to be face to face. I unloaded everything that was wrong with lolicon, how I personally felt, how it was objectively bad, how he was aligning himself with creeps even if he felt he wasn't one, how his reasoning was a direct quote out the child lover textbook, that I was concerned with where he was headed, etc. I laid it all out. I expected pushback but he was genuinely appalled by hearing all this. Apparently it was the first time he considered this perspective, he genuinely believed that fiction didn't affect reality. He said he always knew it was gross and taboo, but he didn't realize it was affecting his well-being and making him that way. I think he almost cried but it was hard to tell in the dark. He did say he was burning with shame and I could tell he was being genuine. I had broken through. He told me that hearing a loved one say it really broke it down for him. He's done with lolicon for good, not just for me, but because he's mortified at how deep he was and how effed up it actually is. I ended up forgiving him because of all of this. We will try recover from this together.
When have you been challenged at something you're an expert at without the other person knowing? One day after work I was at the gym and I saw this very fit older African American guy biking on a stationary bike. There was also this guy who was wandering around, not really working out just talking to everybody, mostly girls, offering advice and chit-chatting. It seemed like a lot of girls were getting annoyed at him and trying to avoid him. But anyways he goes up to this guy on the bike and I happened to overhear their conversation. It went something like this: annoying guy, damn, you're pretty fit for an older dude, what are you training for? Biking guy, ultra triathlon in a few weeks, which is a 6.2 mile swim, a 261.4 mile bike and a 52.4 mile run. Annoying guy seems impressed and jokingly asks will you win BG, probably AG, haha, always got to believe in yourself right. BG, well I've won my last 3 ultra triathlons and the closest person was 20 miles behind me, so yeah, I believe in myself AG, yeah, alright, good luck BG, why don't you get back to work pal? Annoying guy grunted, and stormed off proceeding to get back to disturbing other gym girls. I ended up looking at the sign-up sheet for the gym to check the guy's name out and sure enough he had multiple records for ultra triathlons. But on top of that he's completed multiple ultra marathons, which are 100-mile races, is an ex-Navy SEAL, and had the record for the most pull-ups done in 24 hours. This guy was an insane athlete just biking casually at a gym in San Francisco. Update 6, I'm abandoning a 39-year friendship. She sent a birthday card to me. She sent it to our address in North Dakota because that's the only one she has. I asked my husband to throw it away without giving it to me as I was already back here in Minnesota. I'm glad I never saw it. Just the handwriting would be enough to give me an anxiety attack. It feels a little cold not to acknowledge her effort, but I asked for space. It's way too soon and I don't want to get sucked back in. Her Twitter tells me she hasn't changed at all and actually seems to be getting worse. Edit. Been looking at QX friend's Twitter. Just thought I'd share some highlights from the last 4 hours. 1. The third world welfare takers in Minnesota number more than anyone would believe. 2. Mental illness is often a choice more often than experts would lead you to believe. 3. Tucker Carlson was right. A movement filled with people who think they are gods, able to change biology. This is ultimately a war on Almighty God. 4. When you understand Tim Waltz is owned, this all makes sense. Selling your soul to Satan returns like this. 5. Take away the firearms, you still have mentally ill people roaming the streets. Edit 2. Today marks the 1-year mark I initiated the no contact. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life has turned out to be one of my greatest blessings. She was having a negative influence on me for years, even before 2020 came around. I don't miss her at all and have no desire for contact. I do occasionally feel sad and wish she would wake up, but I have no control over that. My relationships with everyone else are so much better with her out of my life, and I'm just enjoying everything and everyone so much because I'm not judgmental like her. What made you realize there was something off about your friend's partner? In 2009, we traveled from South Carolina to Orlando to stay with my best friend Tom and his then girlfriend Lauren. We decided it was too expensive to fly up to NY to see our families, so we drove down a few hours to have a friend's Thanksgiving. We used to be roommates and he is a good cook, so we figured let's do this. So he and I spend all day shopping, cooking, and dinner rolls around. So we have the usual spread: turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, rolls, and it's all sitting on the counter. We go in the living room to get the girls. Lauren comes in first. Lauren goes into the cabinet and pulls out 3 to 4 large Tupperware containers, and says hang on. Nobody takes anything yet. I need to make sure that I have leftovers for work this week. Proceeds to take about 60% of each dish, leaving it so everyone has extremely small portions, with no options for seconds. Also takes about 85% of the white meat, because reasons, puts all her Tupperware in the fridge and then grabs a plate. From the already small amount remaining, she takes about half of each dish and slops it in her plate and walks into the dining room. Me and my girlfriend look at each other, take small plates and go sit down. My best friend was visibly upset, but didn't know what to say. She eats about half her food, then proceeds to throw what's left on her plate out. Now to clarify, Tom has the biggest heart of anyone I know. He's a 6'5" guy who has a heart of gold and would give you his XL shirt off his back. Why he was with her, I don't know. He had a good job, making $50K, she was not a large girl, average build. Worked at an architectural firm doing 3D renderings, fairly book smart girl. Not starved for money. I really wish that was the end of this, but fast forward to the next morning. Tom decided he was going to make some turkey soup with the leftover carcass and meat. Big giant pot, lots of goodies inside. Now at the same time in between watching the soup, he had been browsing Craigslist at the time for an Xbox 360, and came across someone who was willing to meet that day. So he puts the soup on super low, and we all decide to go out and get his Xbox. Lauren says, oh, I'll get it for you as an early birthday present, and I think, wow, maybe she's not so bad. So we go out, buy the 360, on our way home. Now literally the second we walk in, we could dig in on turkey soup. But, as we are about 4 minutes from home, Lauren is hungry. She says I want a double cheeseburger from McDonald's so she can dunk it in her turkey soup. Tom argues that food is ready, we can see the driveway, but she makes him go to McDonald's so she can get a double cheeseburger. Okay, she's the only one who gets anything and we get home. She rushes to the kitchen, gets a huge bowl, and proceeds to take the large ladle and scoop right from the bottom. Filling her bowl with most of the goodies and little soup, leaving mostly broth for everyone else. Goes into the living room, sits down and eats, while we stand there dumbfounded. Almost there, I promise. We make our soup, sit down, eat, and Tom wants to set up his new Xbox. Lauren doesn't really respond as she's dunking her burger in soup, stuffing her face. So he gets it set up and fires up Dragon Age, just playing around with it. Lauren has now had enough soup, which is her burger and about 3 spoonfuls, gets up and throws out about 75% of her meal. Walks over to the TV, turns off the Xbox, and says, okay, you played enough. I want to watch TV now, and ending with, well, because I bought it for you, I can decide when you can use it and when I want to watch TV. Mind blown at this girl, the next day couldn't come any faster. Wife wants to use her cancer as an excuse to cheat. Chat, is this real? My wife and I have been married since 2001 and together since 1999. She is the most intelligent, thoughtful, loyal person I know, and I have always thought of myself as fortunate to have married her. She is, even today, aesthetically beautiful, and men have told her this throughout our marriage. She has always shot them down. Earlier this year, she was diagnosed with uterine cancer, stage 1, and had a full hysterectomy. I was never concerned about the cancer, it was diagnosed early, dealt with quickly, and she made a full recovery. I took time off work to look after her after the surgery and all seemed well. There were some to be expected emotional instances on her part, and although I am not an emotional person, We dealt with them together. After her recovery, she was insistent that we start living life to the fullest and took a 10-day trip to Europe, followed by a trip to Belize. We also have a trip to the UK and Spain/Portugal later this year. I am fine with these things, building memories and crossing bucket list adventures off our list. I also understand that these are a result of feeling fragile on her part. I was fully on board until last week. She came home from work and told me she wanted a hall pass. A one-time opportunity for her to have intimacy with someone else besides me. She said that since her cancer diagnosis her outlook on life has changed and she doesn't want to be handcuffed from doing things she wants to do. Meaning she wants to raw dog someone. She explained that there is this guy at her work that she has always had some attraction to. He is leaving the company and she will never see him again, so this is the perfect opportunity to sleep with someone else. She said that I could say no of course but that she would be mad/disappointed at me for an indeterminate amount of time and that it would be confirmation of my male toxicity and insecurity. How did she somehow make this my fault? Girlie wants to cheat but I'm to blame for stopping her? Make it make sense. I don't consider myself to be toxic and if not wanting your wife of 20 plus years to have intimacy with someone else is insecure then I guess I am the most insecure person on this planet. I told her that I appreciated her talking to me about this but approval via coercion is not approval. I also said that I do not appreciate her language in describing my, as of yet, unknown reaction to this very large issue that could affect the rest of our marriage/life. When I got up in the morning she basically said that she was sorry for putting such a large decision solely on my shoulders and that to help she was taking the decision away from me. She booked a hotel near where her coworkers are having a party/send-off for this guy and she would spend the night there, with him and hope that I would be here when she got back. F that. Guys, what is she on? She said she would answer any questions I have about the night after it happened but not before. Right, because I definitely want to hear about another guy going at IT with my wife. I want what she's on. She will not tell me who he is or anything about him because she knows me too well and that I will dwell and obsess over him and that would make it too real for me, which is pretty accurate. Chat, is this real? Her point of view is that the less I know the better, which contradicts the offer to tell me anything I want to know after it happened. I think she knows I don't want to know/ask anything or she simply will not tell me. Part of me thinks, at least she has been honest with me and she has been through a lot since finding out she had cancer so maybe I should just let it happen. I certainly have no concept of what she went through so I cannot dismiss how this affected her mental state/outlook on life. Part of me wants to put my foot down and say this is not going to happen and deal with those consequences when they happen. Her BFF called me callous for even suggesting that I wouldn't let it happen because I have no idea what she went through. The audacity of some people. Since when is cheating excusable? I find it hard to believe that she is okay with the possibility of throwing away 20 plus years of marriage over some guy that she has had no relationship with outside of work and that I should just call her bluff. Maybe she thinks similarly that I won't throw away the marriage because of one encounter. I just don't know what to do. I empathize with her and then an instant later I am angry with her. Part of me wants to know who this guy is. What does he look like? What has he got that is so enthralling for her? Bro better look like Henry Cavill with the way she's down bad for this rando. Is he just a safe option? Is he married? Does his wife know? Would I be a callous a-hole for saying no? What can I do besides walking away? Go to part 2. Wife wants to use her cancer as an excuse to cheat. Chat, is this real? It has been an exhausting couple of days. I was hoping that my opposition to her plans would give her pause, but unfortunately that did not happen. I said I am a hard no, and I am not sure how I will feel about you, if you go ahead with it. I was met once again with this is for me. Well no duh. I'm not gonna be the one screwing some guy. She then said, it will be one time. What can I say to help you deal with it? Maybe don't cheat on me? She continued, you'll get over it, we were meant to be regardless of the situation. I seriously doubt that lady. She left Saturday, ostensibly to meet her coworkers, but in reality F the guy. I asked her to text me when she was leaving for the bar and when she did I asked her if she was really going to go through with this. After her response I am not answering any more questions tonight, I will see you tomorrow. I blocked my wife. Then I did something either stupid or brilliant. I went to the bar where the get-together was happening. Well, not the bar but a transit bench across the street. I waited for a long time. It was running through my mind leading up to this event, that I needed to know who this guy was, maybe to compare myself against him. To see what he had that I do not. It was driving me crazy not knowing who he was and what was so special about him that she would ruin a marriage for. After what seemed like eternity, a woman that I recognized from my wife's office left the bar and got in a cab. Soon other people started filing out and a whole group came out and people were hugging a man and shaking his hand. I assumed that I had my guy. I didn't see my wife and had a brief thought that maybe she called it all off. I unblocked her and there were no messages. Everyone said their goodbyes and left. The dude was standing outside for a few minutes and then my wife came out. She looked around, took his hand and started walking away. Together. Of all the emotions I went through, trepidation, sadness, anger, it was disgust that really encapsulated the event for me. Y'all, he was not a Henry Cavill look-alike. This guy was short, fat, and bald, all the things I cannot compete with. Ultimately, I felt like a PR vert for watching from a distance. I followed until they got to the hotel, and then turned around and went home. I woke up Sunday morning and put a lock on the master bedroom door. I moved her things to the spare room and left a note asking her to find other accommodations as quickly as possible. I visited another friend who is a lawyer and he gave me some sage advice and a couple of recommendations for divorce attorneys and made the introductions. My wife had been calling me numerous times since around 11 or so. Once blocked, the calls go to voicemail. I listened to the first couple but felt nothing but some satisfaction when she couldn't get through to me and she was obviously becoming concerned. I didn't want to go home, but I left in such a hurry that I didn't plan an overnight trip properly. I got home around 9 and as per my buddy's advice, I recorded the interaction. I was halfway up the stairs when she came up from the family room asking what was going on. Could we talk? I thought we talked about this. I just answered with I am not interested in discussing this tonight and went to bed. After not getting a response from me through the door, she left me alone. I feel kind of like a child for not talking with her and shutting the door on her, but I just couldn't look at her. Monday I got up and ready for work. She was waiting for me and asked if we could discuss getting back to normal. I said, "You have been doing all the talking for the both of us for the last week, why don't you continue?" And left for work. I have an appointment with the attorneys my friend recommended for this week. Update, my lawyer wasn't available for a few days, so I was faced with the reality of having to live with my wife in the interim. I really didn't want to go home and have any discussion, let alone a discussion about our relationship. When I did get home I was basically ambushed by her friends and my mother-in-law. Instead of taking the remorseful approach, they decided that a full court press was what the situation warranted and I was basically berated by them. I just got cheated on and this is what I come home to? F my life. The BFF was definitely the ringleader, but all of them decided to say such things as, "She's been through a lot, you don't know what she's been through, you have no idea what it is like to face something like this was a one-time thing, at least she told you she could have hidden it from you, she will never see the guy again, and my favorite, you are an a-hole for what you have been putting her through these last couple of days." I hope they all get cheated on. I listened with a dumb SS smirk on my face and when there was a lull in their fury, I asked if they were all done now. Then I asked my wife if there was anyone in her circle of friends or anyone else that she forgot to tell about this. I quietly informed all of them that I was going to sit down with their husbands and tell them about how they verbally abused me, shaming me and trying to coerce me into staying with a cheater. After I told them to leave, I said that I had no say in the entire event and so they have no say in whether I stay or not. My soon-to-be ex-wife sort of apologized. She said that she regretted the entire thing. Oh boo-hoo. Go cry about it. I said there is a difference between regret and remorse. You regret what happened because of the cause and effect. You have regret because your life will never be the same, our relationship will never be the same because you were wholly and willfully unconcerned about me and what I wanted. She asked if I had any questions she would answer now, no matter how disturbing. I said that the one question I do have is why. Not necessarily why this guy, why this low-end unattractive, unfit guy, but why someone else in the first place. She said that the cancer scared her to her core. She felt like she was rushing toward mortality and stepping out of that tunnel was appealing. She said that after all this time of being a wife, mother, and worrying about family, this was something just for her. An escape. The guy was just someone who was interested in her for a long time, she knew wouldn't say no and was completely opposite to me. I said if I was going to risk my marriage, the woman would have to be a serious upgrade from you. I told her that I saw you and him coming out of the bar that night. I watched you walk away from the bar hand in hand towards the hotel. I said that you looked too familiar with each other and asked if there was something going on before all this. She said no, but who knows if that is the truth or not. I said that after all our years together, your lack of respect for me was astonishing. I finished by saying that I would never be able to look at myself in the mirror again if I condoned that level of disrespect and stayed with you. I said I hope we can go our separate ways amicably and that I have an appointment with a lawyer later in the week. I again asked her to find some other accommodations and she simply said, "I am not going anywhere. We are not getting a divorce. I will give you all the time you need and do whatever you need to recover from this. We will get past this." She has asked me to go to marriage counseling, which I refused. Why would I go to counseling? I did nothing to warrant needing a therapist's advice. I had her served and gave her a notice to vacate. The house is my premarital asset. She has moved in with her mom, but I find her constantly coming by to see if I need anything or making suggestions like what if we had an open relationship only on your side or threesomes, which seems kind of desperate and pathetic. Rebuffing her constantly and telling her she has to call to ask permission before coming by and finally seems to get through to her that there will be no us going forward. She has said that she will drag the divorce out for as long as possible, but so far has been compliant. The worst part of all this is telling my daughter that we are getting a divorce and why, followed closely by her begging me to give her mom another chance. I am not sure I would have been afforded the same consideration if I was the one who was cheating. Today I effed up by communicating with my wife. You know how one of the most important parts of a healthy relationship is communication? That thought was on my mind this morning when I woke up next to my wife. The morning sunlight made her skin glow with an aura I'm sure one could only see through my eyes. I shuffled over to her side of the bed, trying to be as gentle as I could. I wanted to preserve that moment, but I couldn't resist the urge to be closer to her. I settled in with my head laying next to hers and looking directly into her beautiful blue eyes. Her closed lids could never hide what I know to be the most lovely pair of eyes I've ever seen. She must have felt me there because her eyes began to slowly open. Just when I thought I couldn't feel any more content in my life, she smiles at me. I smile right back at her and with the thought of communication on my mind I promptly said, "You don't let me spoon with you while we sleep because you'll fart on my sausage, right?" She hasn't spoken to me since. My husband is cheating on me with my best friend. Me and my husband have been married for 6 years and have 2 children together and a third on the way. 2 years ago I found out my dad has stage 3 colon cancer and my mom passed away when I was 12, so when I found out he didn't have much time left I relied on my husband for emotional comfort. Once my dad got his updated prognosis my husband encouraged me to quit my job. About a month later we discovered I was pregnant again and I still hadn't let go of my job, I kept holding out for some reason. After finding out I was pregnant again, he assured me it was still okay to quit my job, that honestly it would save us a small fortune on daycare costs anyways. So I did, I quit my job. My best friend and I have been friends since diapers. Her family is like my family and vice versa. My mom and her mom grew up together. We've always been solid, and right after my dad's appointment when we found out he had so little time left, I drove straight to her house and she held me while I cried for hours. If there are soulmates in friend form, she was mine. This morning I was up with my 3-year-old because he's sick and my husband's work alarm started going off. He has a few he sets, so I turned that one off and gently woke him up. He said he was up late working, so he took the morning off. Rolled over and went back to sleep. As I went to turn off the remainder of his alarms, I saw a text from my friend on his lock screen that said, "I'm assuming since there hasn't been an angry pregnant lady on my doorstep, you haven't told her about us yet?" Time froze in that moment. I took his phone and walked away and just read their conversations. 4 months this man has been effing my best friend. 4 months these people have been lying to my face. And I know what you're going to say, you should have seen the warning signs. But I've been clutching this phone in my hand for 2 hours and nothing. He has been so loving and attentive to me, but he always has been. So kind and gentle. There have been no late night work nights except for once in a blue moon. There has been no lingering touches between them or even glances. They act as they have since the day I first introduced them. How sick is it that she calls him her brother but she screws him? I know so many people get a moment of clarity in situations like this, but I have none. Aside from being sad about my dad, I haven't changed. I'm still a loving wife and mother. I still doted on him and my children. I talk to him about how he is doing and ask him how his day is every freaking day. I haven't allowed the ground to swallow me whole. I know what I have to do, but I just don't want to. I'm about to lose my family and my support system in one blow. I'll confront him tomorrow. Today I just need this last 24 hours of peace. As for her, I won't give her the satisfaction of a response. I don't care why she did it. She did it and it's done. I was always the friend who cleaned up her messes. After today I will cut her out of my life like she never mattered at all.
I'm glad my mom rejected my middle school identity. I, 18F, went to a small alternative school in 7th grade. 2 of my classmates came out as non-binary. I don't remember my thought process at the time, but I decided I wanted to be non-binary too. I think part of it was because I was dealing with body dysmorphia and an eating disorder, so I hated having boobs. I told my mom of my new identity wish, and I told her that I wanted to start binding my chest. She adamantly dismissed me and told me both things were not going to happen. I remember I was really upset after that conversation that she didn't accept me. Today, I'm so glad she shut me down at that time. I'm so happy being a woman now, and happy with my body. I probably would have had long-term physical damage from binding my chest, especially if I had started that early. Even though my mom was a shitty mom, I'm glad she was shitty to me about this as well.
What is the most unconventional way someone started dating you? I started dating my boyfriend of 3 months without realizing he used a secret method to make me fall for him. When I first saw his profile on Hinge, I thought there was something off about him because everything about him was just perfect, even his profile. His pictures were all high quality, so I knew he actually paid attention to detail, which most guys don't do. And his bio went into depth about his life. He's been in a band for a year, interns at a cybersecurity firm, he exclusively baked for special occasions, and he was looking for a committed relationship just like me. It felt like I knew him before we even matched. I was immediately intrigued by him and I really wanted to talk to him, so I hearted his profile and waited for a match, which came hours later. I usually wait for guys to text me, but I started our conversation first and he immediately responded. Somehow, we were able to easily slip into a natural conversation as if I was catching up with an old friend. Even if I was being dry, he still managed to text something that sparked a new conversation. A week quickly passed by of us texting each other day and night. Our texts were just an endless thread of him flirting with me, being interested in everything I talked about, and funny jokes that made me choke on water once. Another week later he asked me out on a date. I was so nervous and excited, but I knew I would have a good time because he planned out our date to the last detail. We went to a boba shop I kept yapping about in our messages. Then we went to a museum because I talked about wanting to see the Tunnel of Love. I could tell he was nervous, but that didn't stop him from acting like he does over text. He was super nice and proper. We went to a popular restaurant I had never been to and ended up at a really nice park to have a picnic with just desserts. He told me he baked everything because it was a special occasion. I nearly cried when he said that, and then he asked to be my boyfriend. I said yes, and everything had been really good for 3 months. We were in that honeymoon phase of our relationship, but I still felt like there was something weird about him because he somehow always knew the right thing to say to me, but I didn't want to ruin a good thing, so I never asked. One day, he came to me broken down and said he had something he needed to get off his chest, and what he told me shocked me. It was completely unexpected. He confessed how much his secret had been weighing on him, and how he was so scared about how I would react that he didn't know the right way to break it to me. He told me that he had no idea how to talk to girls or how to make an interesting profile on Hinge, so he used a dating AI called Pickup Pal to help him. The dating AI generated everything he had in his bio, picked his best pictures, and even helped him plan all of our perfect dates. Every single one of his replies to me was created by Pickup Pal. I had no idea how to take the news, but he said he was using it because he knew if he didn't have a helping hand, our conversations wouldn't have gone the way they did. When he saw that I hearted his profile, he specifically wanted to talk to me and didn't want to mess anything up. It didn't make sense because talking to him in person didn't feel out of place. It really felt like he was his authentic self, He said the reason for that was because he had used Pickup Pals so much that he learned from it and was using every talking point he knew. I actually liked that he wanted to change for the better just to be with me. It showed me that he really cared about our relationship and me. I told him I was disappointed in him because he felt the need to hide it. But I admired and appreciated that he was taking those extra measures to make our relationship perfect because no other guy went to those lengths to date me. And that's what my other relationships lacked. I told him not to worry about anything with me because I didn't want to break up with him and I saw a future with him. I kind of forgot about my sister's kid during an emergency. My bio parents died when I was 10 and my father's best friend, my parents for this story, took me in. He and his wife have been very good to me and are as good to me as my parents would have been. They paid for my schooling right through uni, paid for my wedding, helped me whenever I needed them without ever asking or expecting anything in return. I have a 2-year-old daughter who they babysit often. My daughter loves them and they consider her as their own. They have a daughter who is a year older than I am and she never liked me moving into her home. My parents tried everything to get her to warm up to me including therapy but none of it worked. Eventually, she was told that I am going to be here and she doesn't have to like it but needs to be civil. This strained the relationship a lot and we have very limited contact almost to the point where we are basically strangers. 2 weeks ago my dad had a health scare and had to be rushed to the hospital. They were looking after my stepsister's kid at the time and she was out of town for a couple of days. My mom calls me and asks me to take the kid for a few hours while she figures out my father's situation and finds someone to take care of the kid. Saying that I was distressed hearing about my father would be an understatement and I would do anything for them but I refused to take my stepsister's kid in due to our history. I told my mom as much and she said that she is the one asking for a favor and not my stepsister. I stood my ground and eventually she hung up. My stepsister came back later that night and thankfully everything is now fine with my dad. But ever since, my parents have been cold towards me, have cancelled to babysit my daughter on 2 occasions and have been LC in general. I was venting to my husband and he said what else should I expect when I bailed on them when they needed me the most. That got me thinking and this was the first time. My mom had asked anything of me and I didn't come through which makes me sad every time when I think about it.
Don't want to pay me what I'm worth? Let's see how that works out for you. I used to work for this sorry excuse of a company. The pay was pathetic, barely enough to scrape by, while I was busting my butt day in and day out. I knew I deserved better, but they didn't seem to give two shits about it. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands and show them just how it works out when you mess with someone who knows their worth. I started by stepping up my game at work, going above and beyond every damn day. I was determined to make myself indispensable, to show them just how much they needed me. I pulled crazy hours, took on extra projects, and delivered results that blew everyone's mind. It was like I had unlocked a hidden superpower within me, but I wasn't doing it for them. No, I was doing it for myself. I wanted to prove that I was worth every damn penny they were refusing to pay me. I wanted to make them regret ever undervaluing me in the first place. Little did they know, I was planting seeds of destruction beneath their feet. I started leaving subtle hints, anonymously of course, about their shady business practices and mistreatment of employees. I could see the cracks forming in their facade, and it was satisfying as hell. Rumors spread, whispers filled the hallways, and their reputation started to crumble. But I wasn't done with them just yet. I had one final trick up my sleeve. I dug deep into their sketchy financial records and uncovered some serious dirt. They were messing with the wrong person, thinking I would let them walk all over me. Oh, how wrong they were. I gathered all the evidence I needed and compiled a compelling case against them. I reached out to a kick-ass employment lawyer who was itching for a juicy lawsuit. With them on my side, I was ready to make these bastards pay. The court battle was intense, a roller coaster of emotions. They tried to push back, to silence me, but I stood my ground and fought tooth and nail. It was a long and grueling process, but I was determined to see it through to the end. And let me tell you, the look on their faces when the judge ruled in my favor was priceless. They were forced to not only pay me what I was worth, but also compensate for all the years of mistreatment and underpayment. It was a victory that tasted sweeter than anything I had ever experienced. But here's the kicker, the jaw-dropping moment that will leave you hanging on the edge of your seat. As the company's funds started to bleed dry from the hefty payout, I came across a hidden bank account they had set up for their personal gain. It was overflowing with millions of dollars. In that moment, I knew I had taken down more than just a crappy employer. I had exposed a corrupt empire, filled with greed and deceit. And believe me, I wasn't about to let them off the hook for that. So, I took the case to the authorities and exposed their web of lies. The public was outraged and demanded justice. I was hailed as a hero, a champion of the people. But here's the thing, I'm not done yet. I'm still fighting for what's right and I won't rest until these bastards get what they deserve. So stay tuned, because there's more to this thrilling tale that will leave you demanding justice. Don't crack your knuckles after 1:37 a.m. or this might happen to you. I've lived in the same house my whole life. It's a nice little ranch-style house with just enough room for the family and pets. My parents aren't very strict. They let my brother and I stay out late and play with the other kids in our nice and safe neighborhood. There was only one thing I never understood. Ever since I could even form memories, my parents always told me something weird. They would say every night before bed, if you wake up past 1:37 a.m., go back to sleep. Ignore the cracking, and close your eyes. Don't leave your room, and never crack your knuckles. We will know if you do. It was the only rule in the house that I could never forget and never break, but as I got older I just thought it was some dumb thing they told me to make me stop fidgeting at night. I had trouble breathing as a kid and never really got good sleep even as I got older. I have a lot of anxiety and paranoia. I'm 17 now and I honestly never really think about it anymore. I used to be curious as a kid, but my parents would get weird about it and just tell me to not do it. It's all they've ever begged me not to do. It's never been a big deal for me, so I never made a big fuss about it. There have been a few occasions where I couldn't sleep and I started fidgeting and accidentally popped a knuckle. Just one. But every time that happened I'd hear a strange noise. Like some weird cracking noise in the hallways. It'd scare me so bad as a kid, but as I got older I chalked it up to the house being old and worn down. I've never been so wrong in my life. I feel so stupid. I practically never leave my room, so not leaving it past 1:37 was never an issue. Until I had just finished an essay for my class. My hands were sore and tired, I wasn't even thinking anything of it. God, I wish I could go back. As soon as I cracked my knuckles I realized what time it was. 2:04. I immediately felt a small jolt of electricity coursing through my body. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I settled in my bed next to my cat and turned on Community, trying to settle the anxious thoughts racing through my mind. In the background I kept hearing weird cracking. I thought it might be the speaker on my old TV, so I listened carefully. It wasn't coming from the speakers though. It was coming from the hallway. I paused the show to listen, and as I did I realized my cat was looking at my door with her ears down like she was about to start growling and hissing. But she didn't make a noise. She just looked. The cracking got louder and I could hear that it was moving. I checked my phone to text or call someone but it wouldn't turn on. I turned off everything, and grabbed my laptop to see if that would work. It did, but there was no service. I couldn't text anyone. That's when I realized the cracks had stopped. It was silent. No crickets. Nothing. Suddenly there was the loudest crash I've ever heard in my parents' room. It sounded like something was tearing the walls apart. My cat bounded out of my bed and ran away. I think she's hiding in my room somewhere. She's smarter than me. If I had run at that moment maybe I wouldn't be stuck in the bathtub writing this as that thing bangs on the door. But I was frozen. Staring at my locked door as a cold sweat dripped down my back. After what felt like 3 hours of loud cracking and things being thrown, there was silence. I waited for what felt like forever. But there was nothing. I slowly got out of my bed and headed toward my door. I never thought I'd desperately beg for a window to suddenly appear in my room, but I found myself doing just that at the moment. As I got to my bedroom door, I slowly reached out to the knob. As my clammy hands touched the cold metal doorknob I shuddered at the thought of what could be out there. I shook the thoughts from my head and slowly turned the knob, pulling lightly, making sure the door wouldn't creak. When it was open just enough for me to slither my way through I paused and looked at the pitch-black hallway. My eyes weren't very used to the dark yet, so fear enveloped my whole body thinking whatever is out there is likely watching me at that very moment. A metallic taste crept into my mouth and hit the back of my tongue as I held my breath. I had to move before it was too late. It was already too late, I just didn't know it yet. I slinked out into the hallway, finally allowing myself to exhale. I tried to look around, but it was no good. It was like looking into a void. As I passed my parents' room I glanced in fear, wondering what horrors I'd see. I'm so glad they visited my grandparents today because as I squinted I saw the state of what used to be their room. The bed was quite literally torn apart. The stuffing was everywhere. Shattered glass glistened across the scratched surface of the hardwood floors. Deep scratches covered the beautiful sky blue walls. I could barely recognize the room. I swallowed the scream I felt creeping up my throat as I thought about what it would have been like if my parents were there. That's when I saw it. Under the bed. My eyes finally got adjusted to the complete lack of light and part of me wished they hadn't. My paranoid thoughts couldn't have even conjured up the absolutely horrific image. If God even exists even he would run from that treacherous thing. At first I thought it was a man hiding under the bed because he saw me in the hallway and didn't want to be caught stealing. But oh my God. His effing limbs. They were bent in every direction but the right effing way. I held back vomit as I watched in utter horror. He was grinning so wide it wasn't even physically possible. Here it had blood dripping on the floor from the bones that protruded from different parts of him. How was he smiling? How was he even alive? I watched, frozen as he slowly crawled out from under the bed, bones cracking as he bent in ways I didn't know were effing possible. I winced looking at the sharp white bone pop out from under his lifeless skin. I let out a small, short squeak as the F-ker started doing only what I can describe as a demented crawl run at me before I started sprinting myself. I ran to the closest room. The bathroom. The only other room without a effing window. In my horror I chose to do the dumbest thing. I slammed the door shut and locked it, then ran to the toilet to vomit. I shivered in fear as that thing started banging on the door. I don't know what to do. I'm writing this in the bathtub. At least I was smart enough to bring my laptop. I finally got a connection to the internet, but it's really slow. I texted everyone I know, but it's so late that nobody's responding. I don't know what that thing is. And I don't know what to do if it breaks down the door. What's worse is it's not even saying anything. It's just groaning outside the door. If the door doesn't break I'm staying here until my parents get home. If anything happens I just hope my cat will be okay.
My mean sister-in-law photoshopped me out of their wedding picture because I changed my who was showing bridesmaid dress. She made me leave the reception because I was ruining her wedding. My brother proposed to my sister-in-law at Disney World, and as soon as they announced their engagement, she started planning the wedding. Everything was going great because her mom gave her $20,000 and sister-in-law decided to buy the bridesmaid dresses so she was sure she could have what she wanted. She asked her 4 best friends and me to be her bridesmaids. I did not really expect to be one of the bridesmaids because my sister-in-law and I aren't really that close. My family knew her to be so perfectionist and demanding. On the day of the planning, she presented the dress options to me because I was the biggest and she wanted to make sure that the dresses fit. She got 2 colors in the same size, style, and brand, and the lighter one fit me very well. The darker was extremely tight and short enough not completely to cover my downstairs area. I thought it had been mislabeled, and I showed her. It was the biggest size, so obviously I couldn't wear it. She agreed and put the dresses away. Fast forward to a week before the wedding, she decides to use the dark color and seems to have forgotten that it doesn't fit to me. Her mom set up an extra fitting for the dark dress, and the seamstress and I both freaked out once I put it on again. I had lost 5 pounds, but gained more boobs, and the dress was baby doll style, so it hung well above my hoo-ha. The fabric didn't have any extra to let out seams, and the only thing we could do was replace the straps to make them a couple of inches longer. The chest puckered so much that we sewed the slip part of the dress to the outer fabric to make it less noticeable. At the end of the day, she just told me to wear shorts under it because there wasn't anything else she could do. I told sister-in-law and she just said it couldn't be as bad as I thought, and to deal with it. I said I would rather not be at the wedding at all, and she flipped. She got the whole family to talk to me, and I finally agreed to stay on as long as I could wear shorts under the dress. The day of, we were getting ready and I put on my shorts so my underwear wouldn't show. Sister-in-law freaked and said they showed under the dress and I couldn't wear them and stopped being dramatic. The other bridesmaids looked sympathetic but didn't say anything. So I took off the shorts and held the hem as I walked, and the flowers low. I hid in the back of all the photos, and the groomsmen who walked the aisle with me held my elbow instead of lacing my arm so I could still hold my hem and my bouquet. Immediately after the photos and the ceremony, and with permission from the bride and groom from the day before, I changed into a different outfit, same color, no embellishments, but longer. When she saw me later, she started to whisper, yelling at me that I was so dramatic and I was ruining her wedding and to just leave. I didn't have a car with me, so I just sat outside the venue until the reception ended to not upset her further. She now has a photo from the ceremony hanging on her wall, and I've been photoshopped out of it completely. And she's been reminiscing about the wedding recently, and including me in the conversations, like, do you remember the bridesmaid dresses? Oh, they looked so good. Among other things. I legit cannot tell if she just doesn't remember or if she's trying to be mean.
How I ruined my childhood bully's life in 3 steps. I was a lonely kid growing up. Very lonely. It was mostly because I had a difficult home situation and no friends. My social skills were so poor that I had trouble connecting with other people, except for my grandparents and my dad. Being the lonely kid meant that I was often ignored or rejected by others. It never stopped. But there was one person that I disliked more than anyone else. We'll call her Holly. This girl lived across the street from me, and she always seemed to have a problem with me. Holly treated me like dirt. Here are a few examples. She would throw trash in our yard on a regular basis. She would tease my dog and make him bark all the time. She would also sit on her porch with her friends and mock me whenever I went outside. It went on for years. I resented her with every fiber of my being, but while my grandparents were still alive, there was nothing I could do about Holly. If I did anything to her or stood up for myself, my grandparents would scold me for it. I was more afraid of them than I was of Holly, and for good reason. So I made a plan. I endured all the mistreatment and promised myself that when I was older, I would make Holly regret what she did to me. Thinking of what I was going to do to her when the time was right was sometimes the only thing that kept me going. Over time, Holly grew up and eventually she stopped being mean to me. Unfortunately for her, by then, it was too late. I didn't care about her change of heart. I had been holding on to my grudge for 2 decades, and it was time for payback. I was going to ruin that person. When my grandparents finally passed away, it was go time and I had 20 years to plan. I wasn't idle while I waited. I'd made it my mission in life to learn as much about Holly as possible, and to do that, I became friends with some people who knew her well. Eventually, I knew more about her and her life than her own mother did. The first step I took in my plan was getting her fired from her job. It took longer than I would have liked, but eventually I managed it. Holly worked at a doctor's office, and I knew that the doctor she worked for was very strict, very conservative, very respected type of guy. He also had a huge influence on the local community. I decided to become a patient at his office, scheduling my visits to be on the days Holly was off work. After a couple of visits, I just happened to notice Holly in the staff photo on the waiting room wall. I made a show of looking surprised and then concerned. I got to the exam room and the doctor came in. Shortly after, the expression on my face got his attention. He asked me what was wrong. I told him that even though I didn't want to, as a concerned citizen, I couldn't keep my knowledge a secret and still sleep at night because I just couldn't let him risk his reputation by doing nothing. I had his full attention. Then I asked him, as one fellow citizen to another, not to tell anyone where he got the information I was about to give him. After he promised, I told him that I knew that Holly was stealing money from the office. He was absolutely shocked, and at first he didn't believe me. I told him that I understood his skepticism entirely, but it was easy enough to prove or disprove my information with an audit. If I was wrong, he lost nothing. If I was right, he was saving himself from trouble down the road. He finally agreed to audit her, and he audited everyone else too, so that it didn't look like Holly was the only target. See, I wasn't actually lying. Holly had a gambling problem, and I knew that because it was my dad she used to borrow money from. He'd been her loan shark since she was like 15. Her audit came back negative for money thefts. Oopsie. The doctor fired Holly on the spot when he saw the results of the audit report. Then he called to thank me for telling him what was going on. Before he hung up, he told me that I truly cared about the community. Phase 1 was now complete. You might think that losing a job is not a big deal, and she can just find another one, right? Wrong. Remember how I said that her boss had a very high reputation in our area? That man called every single hospital and doctor's office in the state personally. He wanted to make sure that none of them would hire Holly and risk losing money or trust for associating with her. Holly's field of study was all pertaining to the medical profession, so her education was rendered worthless because nobody would hire her. I wasn't done yet though. Not even close. She lost her job, and because she had no income, her car got taken away. She still had her family though. 2 kids and a fiancé. But who needs families, am I right? With the help of a good friend of mine, we befriended her fiancé online. My friend is nice and she let me use pictures of her to prove that she was really real. She even got on Skype with him once. When he finally made the arrangements for a face-to-face meeting and booked a hotel room, I texted the screenshots of everything to Holly from a burner number. To say everything hit the fan would be an understatement. They broke up. The whole thing was a mess and Holly was heartbroken. She had 2 kids, no job, and now no fiancé who could help her keep the family afloat. A normal person would have stopped then. Unfortunately, I am not normal and I was going full scorched earth. I waited for 20 years. No way in hell was I going easy on her. Now it was time for phase 3. With her fiancé gone and no job, Holly was struggling badly. She needed money and she needed it quickly before she and the kids got evicted. Gambling is a big problem in my area. It's high risk, but it's also fast money. So I started subtly mentioning Holly's situation among my more gambling addicted family. Eventually, one of my family's friends, who happened to be a casino owner, got in contact with Holly and offered her a load of cash to play at his casino. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. 2 days, and then done forever. Holly was desperate, so she said yes. Everything went smoothly at first, but right in the middle of playing, someone called in an anonymous tip about an illegal gambling operation in progress to the local unit. They rolled up on Holly's casino at about 3 a.m. and caught everybody inside, including Holly red-handed. Watching her cry when they handcuffed her and put her in that police cruiser was one of the most gloriously satisfying moments of my life. She was in deep legal trouble. To make a bad situation even worse, most casinos where illegal gambling is discovered are shut down afterwards because they violate the law and regulations. It's also very costly and time-consuming to reopen them. It's up to the property owner to either pay the fines and fees or lose the license and business. A casino shutdown costs thousands of dollars. It would have cost more money to reopen it than the entire property was worth. So it got closed down with everything Holly owned still inside. You can't take things out of a casino because they're going to be confiscated as evidence or illegal property, and it can make you very sick, especially young children. Everything in the casino is usually counted as a loss. Now, some people sneak in and grab stuff anyway, but whatever, it's their problem. On top of that, since Holly was still sitting in jail, there was no way for her to get anything. None of her close family were interested in risking getting caught sneaking into the casino and being accused of stealing or tampering with a crime scene. Holly ended up in jail for a while, and while she was gone, the court gave her ex-fiancé sole custody of their children. When she got out, Holly was only given supervised visitation 2 hours every Saturday. If I recall correctly, revenge is a dish best served cold, and mine was freezing. I was behind every single bad thing that happened in Holly's life in one way or another for an entire 5-year period. I am very much jealous of my husband's ex-wife. Our relationship started with an affair. I know it was wrong. Their marriage was on the rocks and my husband wanted to end it. When she, 48 female, learned about the affair, she didn't scream or shout at me. She was rather calm. She only asked me if I truly loved her husband. I said yes. She told me that if I'm going to be a part of my husband's life, I better treat her kids, 19 female, 16 male and 14 female, with respect and not push them to accept me. She didn't even create any hassle in the divorce. Things were tough. My husband's parents and friends really criticized us and his parents almost disowned him. If it wasn't for his ex, they would have gone with it. But his ex convinced them to not cut us off. Their parents did forgive my husband, but I still feel like an outsider to them. But they do love our kid, 4 male. My husband's ex is very different. She never held a grudge against me. Always pushed her kids to have a relationship with their dad. His oldest doesn't talk to him because of the divorce, and it always hurts my husband that his daughter wants nothing to do with them. The rest of them are good. They do not love me, but they are very civil. She never badmouthed me or called me a homewrecker. She did her best for the kids. She still tries her best so that her oldest daughter has a good relationship with her dad. I used to think she is a silly woman for not holding a grudge. She was always nice to me. When I was pregnant, she first congratulated me, and even though she wasn't invited to my baby shower, she sent me a diaper genie as a gift. I always felt guilty that I hurt such a pious woman. To make it more complicated, she is in a relationship with my cousin, 45 male. My parents love her. Uncle and aunt love her. Even my cousin's kids love her. She never discriminated between her kids and mine. She always sends some cookies or extra food for my son with her kids whenever it is their visitation time. She even met my son and treated him like her own. For the longest time I wondered why she was like this. Is she trying to win her husband back? I even asked her why she didn't hate me when I was her husband's mistress. She told me she doesn't see the point because whether or not she hates me, her marriage was over anyways. I am jealous of her. She is not just beautiful but also graceful. I know I was much younger than her when my husband started the affair, but I can say she is much better looking than I am. Even if I took her place in her husband's life, I can never be her. Edit, I knew very well I wasn't going to be treated like a good person here. I know I am not a good person either for breaking up a home. I am not in a good position right now, and yes, it is because of my husband too. But that is a story I will share later. I fixed the typos. I hope it is clear to you all. Yes, I like her a lot. She is an amazing human. I am glad I don't have any ex-wife drama in my life. And yes, a part of that really makes me insecure because I keep trying to find a fault in her. Because even my own parents liked her when she attended the family functions as my cousin's girlfriend. My cousin and her met each other a year ago when he was visiting me, and she came to drop off my kid along with hers. She sometimes invites my son to her house. That's why she herself dropped him off. I asked her to stay for dinner, and then my cousin and her hit it off and decided to date. That's pretty much it. Also no, this was not written by her. She doesn't use social media that much as far as I know. Feeling guilty about abandoning pregnant wife. My wife and I got married 2 years ago, and I told her from the second date that I didn't want kids and would never change my mind. She agreed and said she didn't want kids either. I was contemplating if I should get sterilized or not, and she told me that she had gotten an IUD. 3 or 4 months later she tells me that she is pregnant. I was not happy at all. I was confused because I thought she got an IUD. It could have been one of those rare times that it failed. If that was true, I was willing to take responsibility and raise a child with her. But it turns out she lied about getting an IUD because she changed her mind on not having kids. I tried to come to terms with that, but I felt so betrayed by her, and I just know that I'm not fit to be a father, and I don't want to be one either. I told her that I wanted a divorce and I don't want to be part of this child's life at all. It really hurts because I love her and I married her thinking that she would never want kids either. I don't at all hate her or anything and hope she finds someone else who is happy to be an active part of the kid's life. She's really angry with this and says that she'll find some way to force me to be a part of this child's life. The only part I will do in raising this child is paying child support to support her financially, and as soon as the divorce is official I would not like to ever meet the child.
What 100% fact is the hardest to believe? That only 6 people have survived rabies. Rabies has a 99% mortality rate. You can have rabies for an entire year without symptoms, and once you have symptoms, it's already late. You'll probably die in a couple of days if you have symptoms. Very few mosquito species prefer human blood, but among those that do, only 5% are deadly to humans. Those 5% though, kill more people annually than humans do. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima on a business trip, and on the day he was supposed to leave, the atomic bomb dropped. He survived with minor injuries and returned to his home in Nagasaki, where he went to work 3 days later. As he was describing his experience to his supervisor, the second bomb was dropped and he survived without any injuries. He ended up living into his 90s. For 60 million years, there was no bacteria, fungus, anything to decompose trees. They just got crushed under the weight of other dead trees. This is where about 90% of coal comes.
What's the craziest adventure you have ever had? Not me, but my dad lived a wild and unbelievable life. He was a world-wandering vagabond who joined the Navy at 16 by giving his older brothers information. Back in the 1960s, my dad was in a plane crash, small plane, and it went down in the desert near Mexico. They didn't know what to do, so they split up. 2 went in one direction, 1 went another, and my dad went his own way. They thought one of them would run in to help that way. My dad ended up somewhere in Mexico and never went back. He just hung around, and traveled all over Central and South America. After almost a year, he decided it was time to go back home, but he ran out of cash or had no cash. So he sold his watch for a motorcycle, used it to get to Mexico. Then, he sold/traded that motorcycle for a car. My dad was a mechanic. He could make any point of sale with an engine run for a bit, at least. Then drove north toward the US. He had no documentation, so he sold the car, walked through a ravine/ditch back into the US. When he actually made it to his brother's place through a combination of walking and hitchhiking, his brother and one of the guys from the plane crash were sitting on the porch drinking beers. They thought my dad had died. My dad thought the other guy died. They drank beers, played cards, and shot the shit. Years later, before I was born, my dad told my mom he was going to get the watch back. He drove from Chicago to Mexico, took a bus to some place in Chiapas, found the guy he sold the watch to, bought it back, and then drove all the way back to Chicago. I have the watch. We have pictures of my dad as a young man living it up in Mexico, India, Germany, UK, the Philippines, Hawaii, all over the US. Postcards he wrote to his brother and so on. Places that don't even exist anymore. My dad died when I was 16 years old. I purposely gave my husband a bruise and I feel like a monster. I'm what he considers a germ freak, as I take it seriously and follow CDC guidelines and then some. He is way more lax and often careless. For example, he tested positive at work after being prompted by his employee. Instead of leaving the facility immediately, he entered his boss's office, interrupting her meeting and informing her face-to-face that he had COVID-19. Gail said everyone in the forum backed up quickly and scrambled for masks. He told me this story while laughing. I was fuming while listening, but I managed to inform him that it was very disrespectful, and I would have been pissed if I were his boss. We live in a tiny, open-concept house that's 900 square feet, and no way to isolate effectively. I don't want to stay with friends or family for obvious reasons. So, my husband and I are managing at home the best we can. I gave him the option of having the main bedroom and washroom or having the living room, kitchen, and guest washroom. He chose the main bedroom because our bed is so comfortable. I took the living room with the cobblestone bricks we call a couch. It's not a problem, and he gets priority because he's sick. On the 3rd day of his illness, he full-on SHS the bed. I walked out of the washroom and was startled to see my utterly naked husband standing 3 feet from me, shoving our brand new sheets into the washer. As karma would have it, the night before he tested positive, we took possession of a new bed and white cotton sheets. The expensive kind you save up for. Now, they were both covered in green, sludgy diarrhea. Words were said, tears were shed, and our conversation ended with him cutting me off mid-sentence and slamming the bedroom door in my face. I admit, I saw red. How dare he come out of the room, jeopardizing my health, and then have the audacity to yell at me. I grabbed the door handle and flung it open as hard as possible. Little did I know he was standing right behind the door, and it whacked into him pretty hard. I apologized, I meant to fling the door, but did not mean to hit him with it. It's been a few days and he has a nice bruise, and I feel like a monster. I cried for 3 reasons. Our bed and bedding were new, and he jeopardized my health by letting me crash into him at 3-foot distance with no warning. And lastly, this is not the first time he has pooped himself. The night we acquired our new bed and put the fresh white sheets on, he joked, "Why did you get white sheets? Now you're going to see my skid marks." And lo and behold, not 2 days later, he pooped on them. Roughly 3 hours ago, he lost his sanity in the bedroom and went for a drive. While he was gone, I grabbed gloves and a mask and went to tidy up his room. I opened the window, turned on the fan, and cleaned his washroom. I found a bath towel covered in human feces sitting on the floor for 3 days. Before this, I saw poop in his pants twice, and once he wiped himself after a BM with a bath towel. Once, I found that he jacked off into my work blouse after putting it in the laundry. These are just the things I know about. When confronted, he denies all accusations and gets upset. Maybe most wives would have had mercy on their husbands for an accidental diarrhea explosion, but I am just at a loss with the lack of hygiene. My ridiculous fiancée wants to wear the gown she had at her original wedding with her deceased husband. Now, she's calling me paranoid and pushy for wanting to choose another dress. I recently got engaged to my fiancée Anna. Anna is a widow and has one daughter Kara from her deceased husband. He died 10 years ago in a car crash. Kara of course misses him a lot and I've done nothing to try and replace him. We aren't particularly close, but we get along nicely and just that's fine with me. However, the rest of her family acts kind of weird around me. Her parents were best friends with her dead husband's parents, so they'd known each other since preschool. Her whole family loved him a lot. It's not like they hate me or anything, but they just really miss him. Every time I see them at a family event I can count on at least 1 or 2 people bringing up some memory of her deceased husband. Then the whole family talks, laughs, and sometimes even cries over the memories. Of course, I know he was a huge part of their lives, so I can't expect them to just forget him, but it does get sort of awkward when they almost forget that I'm even there. We're gradually getting closer, but they still keep me at arm's length. I know every time they look at me, the only thing they can think about is her husband who they miss so much. Anyway, my family has a little tradition with a wedding dress in which my mom pays for her new daughter-in-law's dress to welcome them. When I brought this up to Anna, she just said she'll wear her old wedding dress since it's in good condition and still fits. This isn't a money issue. We could easily afford a new dress in the wedding budget even without my mom. Anna simply said she just doesn't like the idea of stressing out over a new dress when we have so much more planning to do. But it makes me a bit uncomfortable because her first wedding dress is very sentimental. From what I've heard, since she had her daughter so young they were too busy and broke to get married. Kara's dad asked her to sit down with her mom and help color a picture of her absolute dream dress. Anna just thought they were going to a store to pick the closest match, but her husband had his grandma, who passed a month after the wedding, so the exact design because she was a very good seamstress. Anna looks so happy in the wedding pictures of that dress, and obviously, Kara treasures it as well since she saw the design in person at the first wedding. The dress is a beautiful design and memento to his memory, but it still makes me a bit uncomfortable. I know every person who sees the dress will only think of her first wedding the entire time. I'm sure her husband was a fantastic guy and she has the right to mourn him, but I want the wedding to focus on our upcoming life together, not only her painful past. I want this event to speak for only us as a couple and our love. Of course, I understand she'll always love her daughter's father, but I want to enjoy time with the guests without them staring and thinking of her first wedding the whole time. Plus, I'm pretty sure Kara won't exactly be thrilled to see her mom wearing the same dress that was such a special memory to marry another man. It almost feels sort of creepy and disrespectful to wear the dress her dead husband and his grandmother went through so much trouble to make. I would bet neither of them pictured her wearing it to marry some other guy who doesn't even know them. I feel like it's a bit disrespectful to their memory. When I told her all of this, she seemed flippant and said I was thinking too much and that it wasn't a big deal. When I requested maybe even getting just a cheaper plain white gown or not using my mom's offer, she shot me down. She said I was just being jealous and irrational. She seems a bit upset at me now. Some of my friends and my parents say I should have just dropped it when she said no the first time. They say my words made me seem a bit egotistical and petty. I love Anna a lot and I don't like the idea of making her think I don't fully trust her. Was I just being petty and should apologize? What's the most down bad you've ever been for intimacy? I had an insanely cute girl who I knew from high school come up to me recently and ask me for my number. This girl was gorgeous, so I spent the next few days furiously beating 3 times a day to the thought of me and her. Throughout these few days we talked a lot. Things seemed to be going well, and she eventually invited me over to her house to hang out. It was time to finally lose my V card to an absolute 10. The day came around and I made sure to dress nice, smell good, wash away all the cheese that had built up on my willy. As a result of beating 4 times a day for a week, I got to the house ready to do my thing. She invited me and she was home alone. Not going to lie, as soon as she hugged me I got a stiffy. We sat down on her couch and started talking and I thought we were both getting casual conversation out of the way before we got to banging. Oh, how wrong I was. A few minutes into talking, the doorbell rings. My heart stops as I think her parents are back. However, calmly she stands up and tells me she invited one of her girlfriends over too. Now I was excited. I thought I was about to have a three-way with two beautiful girls. However, tragedy strikes. The cute girl comes back and behind her comes an absolute fatty. A whale so massive I wasn't sure what I was looking at. I try my best to hide the shock and horror from my face. No way am I going to have a three-way which will end in me suffocating in between belly rolls without much thought. The cute girl goes to me. Jack, here is my friend Chloe. She saw a picture of you and thought you were cute. So I set you two up on a surprise date. I'll leave you two alone without me having time to process it. The cute girl bolts upstairs leaving me and this monstrosity alone in the living room. I do my best to hide my disappointment and try to make conversation with this wildebeest. Well, the wildebeest had brought alcohol, and it was consumed by us too. After many shots, Chloe's roll started to look appetizing in an inebriated state. I decided to make an effort. I thought to myself, I've made it this far, I might as well do it. Me and the beluga proceeded to have intoxicated, sweaty intimacy on the cute girl's couch, all while the cute girl was upstairs. After I was done, even through the alcohol post-nut clarity consumed every fiber of my being. I felt like throwing up. I darted upstairs to tell the cute girl I was leaving and didn't even say goodbye to the beluga on the way out. The walk to my house was about 40 minutes and I threw up during it. Worst experience of my life. Thanks for watching. Follow for more. I'm scared to date my boyfriend because he's A for the streets player. Would I be the jerk if I, 26, break up with my boyfriend, 28, of 4+ years over his 40+ body count? We dated for 3 years, broke up for 2 years and now we are trying to make things work again for the past year or more. We have an insane amount of trust issues due to his infidelity in the past. Things have been hard but we are doing better than ever. Tonight we had a discussion and he brought up the fact that he had slept with 20+ women in 1 year while we were broken up. Before we dated he had slept with 20+ women and I thought that was his HE phase, but now I am finding out he doubled it since. I am struggling to view him the same. I am almost disgusted by how many women he went through in just 1 year. It makes me question his fidelity going forward, his view on intimacy and whether it's just a transaction to him or not. I am worried about his impulse control, and I'm worried that what he acts like when he's single, doing coke and effing anyone, is a testament to his character and not just some phase. And then on a personal level I am afraid I don't live up to the intimacy history he has and the caliber of woman he can get. This has all made me extremely insecure. He told me to try and figure out if this news changes whether I want to be with him or not and get back to him because he doesn't want to feel judged. I wanted to marry this man, have his kids, all of it. Now I can't even look at him. Will this pass? Or should I just end it? What grossed you out so much in a relationship that you just left? At a party with some of my closest friends and a lot of their mutuals, one of our friends who had recently been diagnosed with cancer was sharing some of his experience with chemo. My then girlfriend interrupted him by saying, "Oh come on, it's not that big of a deal, we all probably have cancer, moles are usually cancer, look, I've probably had cancer in all these places on my arm where I had moles removed." There were a lot of other issues that lead to it, but I broke up with her a few days later. I was just so appalled by her lack of self-awareness. These were my friends who I had known for a decade, and she'd only known them for about a year, and we were in a small group of maybe 9 people, most of whom she hadn't even met before. It disgusted me and I couldn't spend the rest of my night near her, ended it within the week. I just got the best news of my life, and I can't tell anyone. So I'm telling all of you. I was in a car accident, 5 years ago as of tomorrow. I still have permanent injuries from the accident, but obviously I've moved on otherwise. When it happened, we sued, and won $5,000. I bought a new car with it, and I still drive that car today. Well, a few months ago, the lawyers from then called me and told me they wanted to re-pursue my case, because they don't think I was awarded enough money. After the last couple of months of going back and forth, they just called me to tell me we won. After their fees, I will be getting $13,000. I can't tell anyone in my life, because my partner is extremely bad with money and would push me to spend it all, and my friends are the same way. I'm keeping this to myself, and I'm going to use it to make a life for myself. I grew up dirt poor, and always assumed I'd die the same way. This is my chance to actually build a savings, start saving for a house, pay off the work I just got on my car. I can breathe. I can finally breathe, and no one knows but y'all. Am I the jerk for telling my brother it was a dumb decision to invite his new girlfriend over for our nephew's birthday, and I understand why our brother-in-law uninvited him? My 20M brother Ron, 27M, met his late girlfriend Linda when they were 16 and they started dating shortly after. To say the family adored her would be an understatement. Linda was beautiful, smart, and had an amazing sense of humor. She's been part of the family for so long that most of us don't remember a time without her. Most of our best memories have her in them. Linda was very close to my nephew Drew, 6M. Drew is disabled and autistic, so he has a hard time connecting with other people. I don't know how to describe the relationship between Drew and Linda, they just sort of clicked. From the moment he was born she was his best friend and would often watch over him. Sadly, Linda passed away at the end of January after she was hit by a drunk driver. The entire family was devastated and we are still mourning her. Drew took it especially hard since he doesn't really grasp what death means yet. He constantly asks where Linda is and when she'll be coming back, sometimes going as far as having full-blown meltdowns because he misses her so much. He is currently attending therapy to learn how to process his grief, but it's a slow progress. Drew's birthday is in 2 weeks, and my sister and brother-in-law sent out invitations to everyone in the family asking who can come. Birthdays are a big deal in our family and are usually an over-the-top event with catering, so it's necessary to confirm the number of guests. Apparently, Ron wrote that he'll come with Gia, a new girlfriend he is hoping to introduce to the family. Most of the family is pissed at him for moving on so quickly. I personally think it's none of my business and I'm not going to tell him what to do or how to live his life. However, bringing a new partner over to his nephew's birthday when he knows how said nephew was so attached to his ex and is still mourning her, is idiotic at best and cruel at worst. Brother-in-law told Ron that if he's planning on bringing that girl over for Drew's birthday he shouldn't bother coming at all. Ron called me to complain and I told him the same thing, he shouldn't bring her over. Ron called me an a-hole and a bad brother. He said that he's finally happy again after Linda's death and why is it so hard for us to accept that he moved on and support his relationship. I told him I was happy to hear he was doing well and I'm sure the family would someday love to meet the girl that makes him so happy. Still, I'm standing by my opinion that inviting her now was a dumb decision on his part and he chose the worst possible time and place to introduce someone new to the family. Edit, Ron and Linda were still together when she passed away. What's the trashiest wedding you've been to that you will never forget? A wedding on the beach behind Hooters where the officiant stood next to a trash bin. As if it was planned, the trash collector pulled up during the vows. Did he wait to change the bag? Absolutely not. Then children at the wedding swarmed the couple like flies around the trash can, just after the kiss, stepping all over her dress. She bent over to adjust her sandal and a pack of Marlboro Reds fell out of the bust along with her right breast. The bride wore a camo-printed wedding dress that was borderline see-through. She walked down the aisle to the Scooby-Doo theme. Nobody knows why they chose that song, including the couple themselves. They divorced a few months later after they both stopped cleaning the house in an act of defiance against one another. The bride and her sisters did a strip-tease lap dance on the groom immediately following dinner in front of his grandmother. In a Mississippi judge's office with a bag of Cheetos on her desk. She wiped her hands on a napkin, grabbed a Bible, and did her thing with orange crumbs on her lips. Her work heels were not on because she was in her office. I was the bartender but it was a hoot. First, the wedding was outside and it stormed violently. The groom was hammered pre-wedding. Hit on all the bartenders. Then the DJ got hammered and made lewd comments to women in the microphone. Then basically everyone was hammered and knocked over the wedding cake which also happened to be a table with many candles, so the place caught on fire. The wedding was in a suburban driveway. The maid of honor stole the bouquet from someone's garden and the best man proudly announced he had shoplifted the rings. The groom wore a button-down shirt that said "fuck off" in fancy lettering. The bride stopped in the middle of the vows to tell her mother to get that fucking kid out of here. It was her second kid by the previous bloke. The wedding has no tables and chairs. They had an open bar but no effing chairs. Everyone had to put their drink on the ground and hold their plate to eat. It was crazy. Everyone just assumed that some sort of terrible thing happened where the tables and chair people didn't bring them, but afterward I asked the bride what happened and she just said, "Oh, we would have had to pay extra for that." I once worked at a wedding where come time for the first dance no one could find the groom. Turns out, he went to the resort shooting barn to shoot clay pigeons. Upon learning this news, the bride reacted by cursing up a storm on the dance floor.
Today I effed up by leaving box cutter on the shelf at my job and injuring a customer. This was literally my very first job and I only lasted 2 months. I feel totally stupid and humiliated and I'm nervous to tell my parents. I'm a 16-year-old high school kid, and a few months ago I got my working papers and I started applying for jobs in my town. It took forever, but I finally got hired at a chain store that's sort of like a dollar store but everything is $5 or below. Anyway, I had been working there for about 2 months like I said before everything went wrong for me this week. My store is sort of understaffed, and I was working on a bus weekend afternoon with one single other coworker. I was cutting open some boxing and stocking at one end of the store when a customer asked me for help with finding something. I closed and locked my box cutter, and set it down on the display I was working on for a second while I walked to the other end of the store to help the customer. While I was still speaking with the customer, I heard a child shriek at the top of their lungs from the other side of the store. The very next thing I knew I heard a commotion coming from the area I had just been working in, and I started heading back over. When I got back to the display, I found a woman and her crying child. The child was red in the face, screaming, and holding its bleeding hand. The open box cutter was on the floor, and it was obvious this dumb kid had found it, started playing with it, and sliced their hand open. The mom was yelling at this kid while it cried and held its hand. She wasn't even comforting him or adding to treat the wound. I walked up and immediately started apologizing. That's when the lady turned to me and started screaming at me for leaving the box cutter out. She was so nasty, she continued to ignore her child and even started calling me names including the R word. I was shocked when she literally pushed her kid in the back towards me, and told me to patch him up since I wanted to leave knives out everywhere. It was disgusting. The kid was crying and its face was full of snot as it held its hands out to me and got its blood on it. I was so skeeved out. Lucky when I turned around my other coworker was already calling an ambulance for the kid. I thanked her, but when the customer noticed we were calling 911 she started screaming at us about the ambulance bill. The situation only escalated, and I couldn't believe how awful of a mother this woman was. When the ambulance finally got there, she even tried to tell them to go away. But her kid rushed out of the store, and towards the EMTs, holding out its bleeding hand. The EMTs ignored the mom and treated the kid's wounds. My coworker called our manager while they were treating the kid, and my manager told me to go home so the woman stopped escalating. The very next day my manager called me and said the woman had not only complained to the corporate, but she had made a Facebook post saying that a Five Below employee had purposely cut her child. She included pictures of the kid's bleeding hand and it just looked awful even though it was all a lie. My manager had no choice but to fire me, and I'm just so upset that I lost my first job so early and because of one crazy person.
Cheat on me? I'll ruin your life. In college, I met the woman who I thought was the one. We dated for about 2 years and had a massive wedding after a 10-month engagement. We were both continuing our education and I was also working to support us. Over the summer an opportunity came up for her to make some extra money going as an aide on a religious studies trip to Jamaica. I didn't hesitate when she asked me about it. I mean, she was going to get to visit Jamaica and get paid for it. I saw no downside other than her not being at home for 6 weeks, but boy was I wrong. A week before the trip, one of the students from the trip actually seeked me out to clue me in. I didn't believe him until I started looking for evidence on my own. I broke down and checked her texts while she was sleeping and nothing was there. There were a few voice messages, so I decided to listen, and there it was. A message from this guy saying how exciting it was that I almost caught them. I opened up her laptop and hit the emails after that. It was piles and piles of shit, making fun of me for not knowing, getting intimate in our bed and laughing about it. There was so much and I was so heartbroken. She had been screwing the professor who arranged the trip for a couple months, and it was a getaway for them to screw all over the island. Still too hurt to take any action, I was lost. I had no idea what to do, so I sat on it for a couple weeks and acted as normally as I could. I noticed everything now. I felt so stupid for not seeing it before. Of all the signs, one stuck out in particular. I noticed that our stash of homemade weed lube was going down even though we weren't really making love. It was obvious they were also using the fruits of my labor to get off more effectively. This really pissed me off. Like unreasonably so. And then it finally all hit me. I was a goddamn joke to these jerks and they were using the lube I made and screwing in my bed. I didn't hurt anymore, I just wanted to make them hurt. So I made a plan. While she was studying at the library I made a new batch of lube. I put enough weed in it for it to smell like normal, but I also added some poison ivy from our backyard to the mixture, and after refilling the spray bottle we used for application, I waited. A few days go by and I'm working extra so I can be out of the house more, and bam, bait taken. That night after she goes to sleep, my plan goes into action. I sneak her phone away and delete my contact, while replacing his phone number in her contact as mine. I go to bed but can't sleep because it feels like I'm 5 and tomorrow is Christmas. Dawn arrives and she's in the shower. I got a text, "I'm super itchy, are you okay? Now Lord, now is my time. Look, I thought it had cleared up but I guess I had a flare up. I'm sorry, but I've got herpes, and I guess you do now too. I heard this stain squeak in the shower. I'm covering my mouth, damn near losing it." I went on to tell her, still under her affairs contact, that it was time to end things. A new semester was about to start and I kind of have a little crush on a different TA. I wanted her mad. This is a woman that never had to deal with rejection, let alone from a balding dude in his 50s with herpes. When she got out of the shower it was obvious she had been crying, but I could see the anger in her eyes. I could see how uncomfortable she was squirming at the table drinking coffee and mulling the situation over. Another little nudge is what she needed. The reply she got to her pages and pages of anger and sadness was, "Thanks for the good times, but can you keep this a secret between us? I don't want to ruin my chances with anyone else." She's flush with anger now, just seething. She gathered her keys and headed out the door without even saying anything. I knew where she was going. I booted up her laptop and set it to reformat, deleting her paper and any notes pertaining to it before following her to campus. I parked a few lots over and rushed over to his office where I found her screaming at him for giving her herpes. There's lots of people there. Professors, aides, students, other faculty. He is beyond embarrassed and confused. She is ugly, crying in front of her peers. I'm in heaven. The fallout was apocalyptic. He lost his job due to code of conduct of the university, and we got divorced. She never finished her doctorate and went on to be a perpetually pregnant housewife that sells Herbalife on Facebook, and he teaches high school now. It took a few years for it all to unfold, but watching it was glorious. I made my daughter run away, but I don't feel sorry. I don't think she's my kid, in complete honesty. My wife and I have 3 daughters. The oldest is 16, the middle is 14, and the youngest is 10. My entire family and my wife's family all have straight hair. My oldest and youngest also have straight hair. Then there's my middle with curly blonde hair and green eyes. The rest of the family have brown hair and brown eyes. I admittedly am not very close with her because I had doubts that she was mine and I had a hard time bonding with her due to that. My middle daughter insists that she needs special shampoo and conditioner because of her curly hair. She found some that wasn't too expensive so I bought it for her, but she goes through the conditioner like water. She came to me after a little over a month and said that she needed another bottle. I told her she doesn't and that her conditioner should last her at least another month and probably longer, but she insists that you need to use a lot of conditioner for curly hair. I bought her another bottle and told her to use less because she wasn't getting another one for at least 2 months. She used it again in a month, so I bought her shampoo and conditioner from the dollar store. She had a meltdown about how this is going to ruin her hair and that she just got it to a place where she liked it and it was manageable. She blames us for her hair being uncontrollable for most of her life because we didn't learn how to take care of curly hair, even though it's not different than straight hair. She even threatened to shave her head, which I know she won't do because she's obsessed with her hair. Now she's refusing to speak to me and she's being extremely disrespectful to me and my wife. My wife thinks we should give in, but I think she needs to learn her lesson. She apparently had enough because the next day she ran away. I can't help but feel it's my fault. Update, she's not coming back. We found out she had been planning this for months. My oldest daughter was in on it and helped her hide the fact that she's been working after school for months. She taught her how to hide her money and showed her what to put in her bag and where to hide it. What a snake she is. When they were leaving for school, my middle daughter had a new backpack. My wife asked about it and middle said that it was her friend's but she didn't want it so she gave it to her, which was completely plausible considering that friend gives her stuff all the time. A couple of hours later we got a call from the school saying that my middle daughter wasn't there. My wife came home and checked her room and she found a note on her dresser saying that she couldn't handle living with me anymore. What an absolute moan she is. Back in my day, my parents made me live in a cold house so my dad could afford his beer at the weekend and you didn't see me crying and running off. My wife has a sister around 45 miles away and our middle daughter showed up to her house after being missing for 3 days. She refused to go home and threatened to run away again if she tried to make her see us. At first my wife told me to move out so our middle daughter could come home, but she quickly realized that she can't afford to live in our house on her income alone because I am significantly the breadwinner, plus our oldest and youngest deserve to have their parents together, so the middle is going to stay with her aunt until we figure out a plan that works for everyone. I personally feel that she is being dramatic, but I also need to ensure I do not come across as insensitive. I played She's a 10 but with my boy and it went wrong. Do not play this game with your frat friends because it will give them ideas. I was studying for midterms the other night when 2 of my boys burst through the door and startled me and they were clearly on something. Matt, you're a fool. Nah Frankie, that's all you. Oh. What's up Axel? I said, hey fellas, can you not burst through the door like that? Okay Greg, take it easy. Look, we know how stressed you've been and we decided to get a couple games so you can ease up. Frankie, you know damn well I need to lock in for these exams. We know, but you still need a break here and there. Let's play She's a 10 but. Matt, if I play this stupid game will you leave me alone? Frankie and Matt in unison, you have a deal. 5 minutes later you hear me, debating with Frankie. Frankie, how is a furry a 10? I think it's hot when someone is dedicated to their craft, okay? Shortly after Matt pulls a card and it says she's a 10 but she has no teeth. This is when it all started. Frankie jokingly, at least I thought he was joking, asked, hey Ax, is your grandma Allison still kicking? A simple glare from me had shut him up. He has a point though Axel. Frankie, I dare you to shoot your shot this Thanksgiving with her. Don't have to tell me twice. I rolled my eyes and the game continued. Fast forward to Thanksgiving. The 3 of us arrived at my house from our college dorm and to nobody's surprise, my grandma, Allison, is the one that opens the door. I immediately noticed Frankie lingering in the hug and placing his hand on her hips. I had honestly forgotten about this until I saw this. Once we got in, I palmed Frankie's head, shook it a bit, and said, you know you have no shot, right? And Frankie replied saying, damn Axel, you seem nervous. Nervous that I'll be the only one getting the yams tonight, haha. Later on we were all seated and waiting for the food to finish. Frankie says he has to go too. The bathroom, I think nothing of it. Then I hear something ding. Indicating that the food is done but my grandma is nowhere to be seen. Allison. My father yells, that's when my grandma hobbles into the kitchen and Frankie follows about a minute later. Her hair looked crazy, while he had this very sly grin. I think I'm your grandpa now. He whispers into my ear. I was genuinely speechless and maybe even a bit traumatized. Laughter from Matt and Frankie echo throughout the house. I am now in therapy. What is the scariest true story you know? Another woman fell in love with my great-grandfather, and he was already married to my great-grandmother. So she came to their home with a gun while he was at work. When my great-grandmother opened the door, she shot her point blank. However, my grandmother, then 3-ish years old, was behind her, watching everything. I guess she concluded that she wouldn't remember, or wouldn't be believed, or simply couldn't shoot a child, being a mother herself. And thankfully didn't shoot her. This was around 1930, forensics weren't very advanced. No evidence was left. The case goes cold. Life continued on and eventually the woman, named Lorraine, got what she wanted. She convinced my great-grandfather to marry her. She had 2 children from a previous marriage, both older than my grandmother. I don't know what happened to her first husband, honestly. She told everyone exactly who murdered her mother, but no one believed her. Who would believe a kid who obviously misses her mother, and is having trouble adjusting to her new family? People just thought she demonized her stepmother for replacing her mom. Or maybe imagined it. It's an easy conclusion to reach, honestly. And so years and years pass, she grows up with her mother's murderer in her own house. Sleeping rooms away. And Lorraine knows that she knows. She appears like the perfect housewife, swooping in and caring for the grieving father and child. My grandmother grows up tormented by her and her children. There was obvious favoritism, the stepkids are spoiled and she's the black sheep of the family. She moves out and marries my grandfather the first chance she gets. She moves on and has children of her own. 5 boys. Lorraine became ill and finally landed on her deathbed. And there, she finally confessed to the truth, and told everyone what she had done. I guess she was worried about the state of her soul. 57 years had passed since the murder. 16 since my great-grandfather had passed. He never knew the truth. No documents were ever officially amended to state that she was the murderer, as far as I know. The authorities consider the case cold, still, almost 100 years later. It drives me nuts that my grandmother always knew. And even after she was an adult, people just said, oh, you had an active imagination as a child. There's no way to live with that knowledge for so long. And have no one in the world on your side. Your whole family against you. That's what scares me.
I feel like the other woman, even though I'm the fiancé. I just need to get this off my chest. I feel like the other woman in my own relationship, and it's eating me up inside. My fiancé, Lance, and I have been together for 3 years and engaged for 6 months. Before me, Lance had a 5-year relationship with a woman named Elaine with whom he shares a son. Lance is a quiet and reserved guy, and I knew going into this relationship that Elaine was his first love. He had planned a whole life with her, but she didn't want the same things. She never wanted to marry him or plan a life by his side. She only realized her feelings after their son was born, and she broke up with him. Despite their past, they co-parent very well and are respectful of each other. Their son is the sweetest boy, kind, well-mannered, and absolutely adores both of his parents, but something has always felt off to me. Lance has told me that he really loves me and wants to spend his life with me, but he also said that he doesn't want any more kids, and that I shouldn't try to be a parent to his son. I'll only be involved in his son's life as much as they think is needed, which I think is fair, but it hurts because I want a family of my own. Still, I love Lance enough to accept this. Sometimes I think Lance might still be in love with Elaine. I feel like he's giving me what he couldn't have with her and that I'll never be loved as much as she was, but then the morning comes, and everything seems good and shining, and I feel awful for thinking that way. Still, I've seen the way he looks at her when they meet because of their son. I've seen the way he looks at me too, which is lovely and everything, but still different. He swears he loves me and that there's no one else in the world for him, not even her. He knows about my insecurities and jealousy and has reduced all contact with her to the bare and respectable minimum. Our wedding is set for next year, and this time has helped me understand most of my feelings. From the very beginning, I felt like I was meant to fill the gaps Elaine left, and I'm done with that. I want a full life, a happy life, with kids, with someone who looks at me with real love. I plan to sit him down in a few days and lay the cards on the table. I'm not willing to compromise anymore, and I'm certainly not going to feel like the other women in my own marriage. I feel happy and determined, even brave. It took me so long to realize it. If he's still adamant about certain aspects of our relationship, I know it's time for me to go.
What's one nice thing you did that backfired tremendously? I was in an extremely weird and once-in-a-lifetime kind of car accident where I was not supposed to be at fault. I really don't want to go into detail, but another car hit me going twice the speed limit, sending us both rolling down into a ditch. I got out through the windshield since it was shattered and was able to cut the airbag. The other car was in much worse shape and was on fire. I ran up to see if the driver was okay, but she was falling in and out of consciousness. Her car was upside down and the roof was caved in, pressing her into the seat. The seatbelt was tight around her and her airbag wasn't deflating. I struggled with the door and was able to get her out as the fire spread onto her. I remember passing out a little after I was able to put out the fire on her legs. Woke up in the ambulance, broken leg and concussion. EMT said I was only able to save her because of all of the adrenaline coursing through my system. The police that wrote the report found her at fault and said I was a hero, but no good deed goes unpunished. She had first-degree burns on her legs and face and had super cheap-ass insurance. She ended up suing me and dragging me into a 4-year legal process that not only cost my insurance thousands, but had me spending money on legal fees and lost wages from constantly having to go to court. It was finally settled because somehow all she needed was to prove I was at least 1% at fault and my insurance folded. She was awarded my full liability. $200,000, plus $25,000 that I'm on the hook for personally. I was barely able to get my car paid off and whatever was left in my pocket for a new car had to go to her. It's been 6 years since the accident and I still owe about $12,000, but I'm trying to avoid paying that. The last time I talked to my attorney after she was awarded damages, he said something that I'll always think back on and wish I could have changed my actions. He said if he was in my shoes and knew the outcome, he would have left her in there to burn. Did I unknowingly engage in sexual harassment as a child? Hi there. Recently, I've been bothered by something from my past, and it's been weighing on my mind so much that I'm thinking of discussing it with my therapist. I'll share the story with you, hoping to gain some guidance. When I was around 12 or 13 years old, my family and I would visit our home country and spend time in a small village where everyone knew each other. During that period, I didn't have any friends and often faced bullying because I was both overweight and a foreigner. So, when I arrived in this village where people were automatically friendly to one another, it overwhelmed me in a way. My cousin and her 2 friends would often invite me to play outside and show me around the village. On one particular night, we had a large family gathering at our house, causing it to become quite crowded. To escape the crowded space, we decided to play a game on the streets. I introduced them to Truth or Dare, which they were unfamiliar with, and without fully understanding the implications, I suggested a dare that involved undressing. They laughed and resisted, realizing it was not a game they wanted to play. Thankfully, nothing inappropriate occurred that day. However, fragments of this memory have resurfaced recently, and it has been eating away at me for months. I recall telling them to keep quiet about what happened. I knew deep down that what I did was wrong, even though I was just a child at the time, filled with curiosity. I don't want to shift blame or avoid responsibility. I accept that my actions were inappropriate. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm still the same person, that fat little kid who tried to force himself onto someone, especially the only people who were kind to me back then. Interestingly, when we continued to visit the village, I didn't notice any hostility or awkwardness from those people. I didn't even think about this incident until I began working on self-improvement. Suddenly, it resurfaced, and now it consumes my thoughts. I don't know what to do. I want to apologize to those involved, but we have all spread out over the years, making it impossible to find everyone. Also, what if their parents were to find out? We are now adults, and I doubt that it would change much in their eyes. I'm filled with conflict, and the stress from this situation has even affected my ability to maintain a healthy diet. At times, I even feel that I deserve this torment. I appreciate any advice or guidance you could offer me. Thank you. How did your mother ruin your life? Growing up, my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and she was abusive. Being hurt, starved, humiliated and insulted were everyday occurrences. My therapist has told me it sounds like she suffered from a narcissistic personality disorder, and being alcoholic didn't help. Everyone had to be exactly as she demanded, and God help you if it wasn't. When I was 12, two major things happened in my life. I got a dog, and my father was diagnosed with cancer. Due to his cancer and the crash in the housing market, he didn't have work and couldn't physically work for over a year. During this time, she burned through his entire life savings, buying wardrobes full of clothes she never wore, cupboards full of dishes we never used, boxes filled with jewelry, just collecting dust. My brother, who had received some of her ire, began working with my dad, leaving me alone with her all day. We lived in the middle of a forest, in the middle of nowhere. I would spend hours upon hours outside, weeding, watering, walking, anything to stay away. My dog was the only friend I had ever known, the most important thing in my life. I named her Baby. Baby was beautiful, svelte muscle, glossy black fur, intelligent brown eyes. She could be serious when I wanted obedience, and happy when just wandering. She stood by my side when I encountered mountain lions, twice, and threw herself in the way, growling and with hackles raised, when large man or other dogs approached me. She was 80 pounds of beautiful, vicious don't mess with my mama. Since I spent so much time with her, I had trained her to perfection. Sit, stay, lay down, shake, play dead, find other animals or people, open doors, fetch, heel, etc. I never put her collar on her because I never needed to. I never needed a leash to walk her. She would wander 30 yards away, a short whistle brought her right back to my side. On the somewhat rare occasion that I didn't have endless chores to do, I was to stand in a corner of the kitchen and wait. I wasn't allowed to sit, or walk. I had already given up talking because anything I ever said was wrong. She made sure I knew. I could stand in the kitchen for hours, not moving, just waiting. She hated my dog. I don't know why, probably for whatever reason she seemed to hate me, but one day terrified me beyond anything she had done before. I was 17, and I was standing in the corner, zoning out while she was ranting, thinking about a slice on my arm and watching the blood drip down. I zoned in just in time to hear, "And we'll get rid of your stupid dog, won't that be wonderful? We'll never have to deal with that ugly mutt, I'll just kick her out and we'll never see it again." Oh, doesn't that make you so happy? She was giggling, gleefully talking about getting rid of Baby, my sweet little girl, the only thing that kept me from acting on all the dark thoughts that had clawed at me for around a decade. I felt the hole inside of me sink deeper, but I didn't cry. To cry in front of her was to admit weakness, to invite pain. Then, she moved out. She took everything that wasn't nailed down, didn't matter who it actually belonged to, and left. She got a trailer in the nearest town, started spreading her legs about as often as spreading lies, claiming my father forced himself on her, abused her. She was afraid for her life. I let a little hope flicker inside me. I still had my baby. My father told me we had to move 2 states away, to stay with family and start over since she cleaned him out and he had to go bankrupt. He said that we couldn't take any of the animals, we had to find them new homes. 2 of the dogs went with my eldest brother, another to his wife's brother. My father had told me previously that we all needed GEDs, so we went to the next town over and studied at the college there. I met a couple that worked there. The female worked in the extracurricular study office, the male was a janitor, and they adored Baby. They agreed to take her. I remember when they came to pick her up, I put her leash and collar on her. I knew she would try to stay with me. She obeyed perfectly, jumping in their truck the instant I said to. I remember watching the female of the couple holding her leash as she twisted and wriggled, trying to keep her eyes on me through the back window of their truck. And she was gone. I didn't cry. Tears didn't belong to me. About a month later I was sitting in my grandmother's house, a comfortable, cool pocket in the middle of Arizona's oppressive heat, nestled against a small mountain in the middle of a city. My mom had always told me that my father would beat me to death as soon as he saw me, so I was terrified of speaking to him. I can't remember what I asked him, but I know it was permission for something. His response hit me like a wave, and I will never forget it. "Of course, you're an adult, you can do what you want, I just want to make sure you'll be safe." It was like a floodgate was opened. I climbed to the top of the mountain next to the house, and cried. I cried 18 years worth of pain, 18 years of you'll never have friends and never be loved because you are so useless. But I realized that out of everything, the thing that hurt the most, was knowing that I would never see my baby again, never hold her and weep against her fur like I used to. I wouldn't watch her grow old, even though I knew I couldn't spend the rest of my life with her. I wanted her to spend the rest of her life with me. I had been told many times that I was so ugly I shouldn't punish others by forcing them to look at me, so even in Arizona I wore long pants and a jacket. I cried for so long and so hard that I ended up blowing my nose on my jacket. I had mucus streaming out of my eyes, my nose, mouth, and I couldn't stop. I don't know how long I was up there, but I cried until my body stopped shaking, my face stopped running and I could breathe without letting out a sob. If my baby was still alive, she would be almost 13 by now. I don't believe in God, but every now and again, when the old memories start to flood back, I will pray. I don't use a name for any deity, I just whisper in my head, please keep her safe, make her happy, my sweet baby. Please don't let her suffer, above all, please let her forget me.
I called my idiot stepdad a child lover and now he's pissed. Am I the a-hole for calling out my stepdad for being a hypocrite at my sister's birthday dinner? I am my mom's oldest child. She met my stepdad when she was 19 and he was 27. They were married a year later and went on to have my siblings Nathan, Alyssa, and Teddy. It's not a secret that I don't like my stepdad. My mom was a vulnerable teenager when she met him and he was a grown man. He made her quit school and become a housewife, all while isolating her from her family. I left at 18 because I couldn't stand seeing him with her. I hate how he talks to her, and how he's treated her their entire relationship. I visit when he's working so I don't have to see him but still get to see my family, so the dislike I have for him is obvious. My sister Teddy had a birthday dinner a few days ago, and she really wanted me and my girlfriend to be there. So despite my dislike for my stepdad, I went because I want my little sister to be happy. At the dinner, somehow the fact that my girlfriend is 24 was mentioned, and my stepdad made a face before asking her, "You don't think it's inappropriate to date someone who can hardly legally drink?" I think all the years of quiet resentment just bubbled over because I didn't even think about it before I asked him if he developed those morals before or after he started dating a vulnerable teen mom when he was nearly 30. He got really red in the face and my mom very quickly changed the subject. The next morning, I got a text from my mom saying that my stepdad doesn't want me coming over to the house anymore, even when he isn't there. Apparently he made that announcement to my siblings too, and since then, both of my sisters have started giving him the silent treatment. My brother texted saying he agrees with me, and he wishes our mom would leave his dad too, but I shouldn't have done that at T's birthday dinner. My girlfriend agrees with my brother, but I talked to Teddy, and as far as she's concerned, nothing I said was inaccurate and she thinks her dad should have kept his mouth shut if he didn't want me calling him out. The whole extended family found out about it though, so now my stepdad's mom is accusing me of lashing out at him because my mother never married my father, so they think I'm just jealous apparently. The whole thing is an absolute mess and I'm being called a jerk for ruining my sister's birthday dinner. So am I? My lonely sister and my son have been getting oddly close. One day I walked into his room and found my sister sleeping in his bed. She was the little spoon. My younger sister, 38, moved in with my family half a year ago after a horrific divorce. We've always been close, so I was more than happy to have her with us. I lived with my husband, 45, son, 21, and daughter, 15. She slept in our guest room. Or so I thought. My sister and son got really close, bonding over a shared hobby, and obviously I thought nothing of it. I mean, how on earth could I? She held him as a baby. But early yesterday morning when I thought my son had gone to work, I went into his room to check something for renovations. There they were sleeping in his bed. I freaked out. I had the absolute worst feeling in my gut. She claimed they were only sleeping, but her face was bright red and she was wearing this skimpy nightgown. I told her to get out and never come back. My son immediately started defending her, repeating that they were only sleeping and that I needed to stop being mean to her. In my anger I told him to go with her. They're out now, but I have no idea where. I've been a mess. My sister has nowhere to go besides her cheating ex-husband who has moved his mistress in. But I can't get the image/feeling out of my head. Did I overreact? Update: my son refuses to come back if she won't be here. Says he will go wherever she is. It's like he's in love. I'm so sick. Update 2: I found intimate liquid on his bed. I'm done. I don't want to see her ever again and I want a break from seeing him. I'm sorry, I genuinely just can't look at him right now. I'm wondering where the hell I went wrong as a mother. He still refuses to come home without her anyhow. I have told every single living family member we have and they're all disgusted with her. She's dead to the family. I hope in time, I can talk to my son.
My wife no longer wants to sleep with me. I reached the breaking point recently. I asked her if she wanted to do the deed. She half-heartedly grunted an agreement, rolled over, pointed her butt at me and refused to take off her bra. I told her I'd rather not do it at all if that's how we're going to do it, and now she's furious. My wife and I have been together for 11 years and currently she is 34. We have 2 daughters aged 4 and 2. For the first 7 years of our relationship our intimate life was fantastic. We did it a lot and we were very creative. We also spent a lot of time unclothed back then. My wife used to be kind of an exhibitionist and was not shy about being unclothed in front of houseguests and at beaches. I always found this to be a massive turn on and she knows it and used to encourage me. At the present day, kids take a toll on the intimate life. After the birth of our first, it picked up again quickly. After the birth of our second child, it has not. Since then my wife has approached intimacy as something she has to do to maintain my good mood. Sometimes she'll say, "Okay. I can feel how bad you need it. Let's do it." But it's always very robotic. She undresses, we do it, she gets dressed again and goes back to talking about work or the kids. She has also become never unclothed basically, even though she has maintained her figure well. When I compliment her honkers she'll say, "These are not attractive. These are food for our daughters." And then she'll quickly put a bra on. Great. Just what I always wanted. This finally got to be too much for me and I told her I miss our old intimate life and I don't like her new attitude toward intimacy. She told me to suck it up and leave. Edit: turns out she was cheating on me the whole time, and sleeping with me felt like cheating on her new love and so she was reluctant to do it. What does your pet do that is really stupid? My partner and I have 2 cats, Carl and Lucy. I've had Carl for much longer. He's my bro, always follows me, sleeps on my face every night, massages my scalp when he's hungry in the early morning. I love the little guy more than anything. But Lucy has made me realize over the last few months that either Carl is an idiot or Lucy is brilliant. Lucy nudges not quite closed doors open with her head. Carl tries and usually fails to wrench them open by putting his paws under the crack and prying or pushing, often opening and closing the door multiple times as he tries to figure it out. Lucy watches patiently as I poo, knowing she'll get her cuddles soon. Carl jumps on my lap, assuming it's belly rub time. Lucy slices open thin food liners, potato chip bags, mostly, and feasts. Carl gets his head stuck inside the bag and stumbles around the apartment completely blind. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten home from work to find him with an empty bag of Doritos on his head. Lucy hangs out and watches the waterfall during showers. Carl hops in and gets soaked for a brief moment before realizing his error and bolting. Almost every morning, Lucy watches birds and rabbits from the window. Carl pounces at them, straight into the window. Lucy naps on my lap, knowing she'll get some loving. Carl naps on my neck, apparently not knowing he'll get removed. Lucy toys with the Christmas ornaments. Carl gets trapped inside the tree for several hours at a time. Lucy drinks from the toilet if left open. Carl falls into the toilet if left open. Lucy got fixed last week and has a cone. Carl somehow managed to get it off of her and stuck on his own head, backwards.
My husband met a woman on Saturday. I, 42 female, and my husband, 43 male, have been together for 18 years, married for 13. We have 3 beautiful children and a pretty great marriage. We have our ups and downs of course, but we've got a good communication style with each other. We resolve arguments well, and after all this time we genuinely enjoy each other's company. He has never in all this time given me a reason not to trust him. I've never looked through his phone, checked his email, sniffed around his socials. He has female friends from college and work that he spends time with, and I know them and their husbands, and I've never had a problem with any of it. So he goes out to run a few errands Saturday afternoon and he comes back and says, "Oh my gosh, I have to tell you, I met this woman at the store and we talked for like 30 minutes. Turns out she graduated the same year he did from their rival high school, and they started talking because she's a big fan of the band on his shirt, local band. She's married with twins near our youngest kid's age. Fun, right? Well, they swapped phone numbers so that he could let her know next time that band is playing, etc., etc. Honestly, it didn't even flag as weird to me. He's a super social person and easy to make friends with. I thought, oh fun, maybe this is a new couple we could double date with. But then, I was borrowing his iPad yesterday evening and a text popped up from her, and that's when I realized they've been texting all evening, which we've been watching TV. Then later I caught him staring off into space with kind of a dreamy look on his face, and I asked him what he was thinking about, and he said, "Oh, I'm just trying to remember who I know who graduated from the woman's high school." I can't stop thinking about it. By all accounts it's incredibly innocent, and like I said, he's never ever given me a reason to worry, but this has gotten under my skin. I feel very uneasy about the whole thing. I don't want to say anything because he didn't hide from me that he met her. He told me her full name, and he loves meeting new people anyway, so I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. But I've never been in this position before and I'm very, very uncomfortable.
My mom intimately assaulted my dad and no one is talking about it. My friend John had a seemingly ordinary life until one night, he discovered something so twisted and dark it would make your skin crawl. His own mother had intimately assaulted his father. Nobody was talking about it, like it was just swept under the rug. John couldn't let this go, so he decided to delve deep into the twisted psyche of his mother. What he found was an underground network of wealthy elites who reveled in the pleasure of dominating and degrading unsuspecting victims. This secret society was using a front, a seemingly innocent company, to carry out their heinous acts. John was determined to expose the web of malevolence that threatened the lives of countless individuals. But when he stumbled upon something even more sinister, he knew he had to act fast. The company was stealing identities and arranging forced marriages. It was a vast network of corruption that had ensnared countless innocent lives. John was now standing at the precipice of an unimaginable battle. He had the evidence, but he had to decide whether to protect his own sanity by walking away or to risk it all to expose the truth. It was a heart-wrenching decision, one that would determine the fate of his family and the countless others unknowingly caught in this sickening web. John was ready to take the plunge, but then something unexpected happened. Out of the shadows stepped a mysterious figure, a man who seemed to know everything about John's family. He offered John a deal, one that would put an end to the secret society and the twisted network of corruption. But the price was high, and John was left with an impossible choice. Will John accept the mysterious man's offer and risk everything to save his family and countless others? Or will he walk away and let the darkness consume them all? Stay tuned, for this tale is far from over. What is it like to be a stalker? I'm a 45-year-old female who stalked several former lovers between the age of 16 and 30. The general whys and wherefores that therapy revealed. I process rejection particularly poorly because of the abandonment I felt when my father left and divorced my mother. I had begged him to stay, but he didn't. It made me feel worthless and scared, like someone who wasn't worth staying for. So when a boyfriend broke up with me, I ended up stalking him, drawn into his wake, unable to let go. I felt that if I could prove I wasn't worthless, then maybe he would stay. This never worked. It just gave him multiple opportunities to reject me, and more reasons for me to feel terrible about myself. I was sad, pathetic, desperate. Frown. Eventually I would get angry at these guys for avoiding, and thus rejecting, me, and that would motivate continued stalking, sometimes accompanied by vindictive behaviors. For example, I keyed more than one guy's car. Once, I collected a box of red ants and dumped it in someone's mailbox. I wrote long, emotional letters designed to make them feel guilty. So embarrassing to think about now. What made me stop? A great guy who didn't leave, even when I told him about the stupid things I'd done. Smile now long, and happily, married. I still struggle with the vacuum created when someone moves on in my life, such as when a friendship ends. But I've had enough therapy and gained enough maturity to recognize my feelings for what they are and resist taking action. It took me a long time to understand that it's okay, and normal, to feel sad when something good ends, and that others' decisions aren't a reflection on me. I have learned to let people go, even though it is something I have to consciously remind myself to do. Oh, and the antidepressants don't hurt either. Karen tries to unalive paramedics and heart attack victim for cutting her off. So about 10 months ago a guy goes down outside a strip mall store and has a medical alert bracelet on about a heart condition, so paramedics get called and they arrive quickly. They showed up in a 4-door pickup with a bed shell, all fire engine red, flashing lights and sirens, fire department and paramedics all over the truck. They jump out and start hooking this guy up to the blood pressure cuff, sticking the heart monitor pads to him, and doing everything they can to keep this guy alive. Suddenly, a Karen rolls up behind the paramedic's truck and starts screaming that the truck cut her off at the intersection. Then she demands the paramedic look at her as she melts down while he is starting CPR on the victim. The paramedic is ignoring her entirely, but has to get something from the truck. She blocks his way and gets moved aside, as he goes to the truck. This is where Karen pulls out pepper spray and sprays the standing paramedic directly in the face, but she's not done. She sprays the second paramedic on the ground, and just for the trifecta, hits the heart attack victim with a blast, screaming that he is too young to have a heart attack. I took it as my cue to remove her pepper spray, and grab onto her until the police arrived. Still others are trying to help with CPR while some try to wash out the eyes of the paramedics. The police arrive and Karen goes immediately into handcuffs. She then attempts to bite and kick the police, which results in getting hogtied and her shirt pulled over her face, at which time she starts screaming rope. The results are 2 counts of aggravated assault with a weapon on paramedics, 2 counts of assault on police, 1 count of aggravated assault with a weapon on the heart attack victim, and resisting arrest with violence. She also is being sued by the heart attack victim for $10 million, which she apparently has. Her criminal trial is coming up soon. I bought a new suit for it and my old SS will be there with bells on. What was a loophole that you found and exploited the hell out of? Going anonymous here so I don't lose my degree. I'm currently in college at a large university in the US. My minor has simple requirements: pass at least 4 of 10 offered classes. As it turns out, 4 of the 10 classes are taught by the same professor. He teaches 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring. By chance, I took him once. I've taken him 3 more times and have earned my minor, getting A's in every single class. And I guarantee you I couldn't pass a basic class with any other professor. This professor gives weekly quizzes and monthly tests in person, but via the computer. We sign into a special software that doesn't allow us to search the internet, and take the test with him there. Everything was multiple choice. But here's where it gets interesting. Many of his questions had more than one answer. So, he set the test so you could check as many answers as you want. For example, we could select both A and B because the answer could be both. But the test never counted how many answers we selected, and it only made sure you checked the right box, not if you checked a wrong box too.
So if the answer was A and B, and I checked A, B, and C, it would count as right.
So what did I do?
I checked A, B, C, D, and E for almost every single question.
The software would see that I checked the right answer, because I checked every answer, and marked the question right. Sometimes, to maintain realism, I'd purposefully check only one box for a few questions to get them wrong. My average score stood between 95 to 100% the entire semester, and quizzes and tests made up 75% of his grading, the other 25% being just menial homework. These classes boosted my GPA noticeably, and now I have a particularly impressive minor to put on my resume. What was your shite? I'm into that moment with a partner. The first time I went on a bike ride with her. I wasn't much into bicycling, but she likes to bike everywhere. I was new to this town when I moved into a new rental with her, so I didn't really know my way around. She told me how good it is using the bikeways we have here. I succumbed and bought a cheap shitty bike thinking I'll probably do it once and hate it and that will be the end of that. Turns out it was a real fun way to see the sights and get to know the town. After the first tour I definitely said yay, I'm into this. And we bike heaps now, even if to just get out of the house. It's good to get some cheap exercise, feel the wind in my hair, breathe fresh ocean air, and stop for a break on the beach before we turn around and head back. Roommates of Reddit, have you ever fallen in love with your roommate? How did it work out? I recently asked my roommate, who's also a single mom to a severely autistic son, out on a date. She moved in with me a few months ago when her previous apartment became uninhabitable and her ex-husband stopped paying child support, leaving her in an absolute shitstorm of financial trouble. I've been helping out by taking care of her son while she works, as she finds it effing challenging to handle everything on her own. Initially, our living arrangement was meant to be temporary, but as time went on we all got comfortable with each other. Over the past couple weeks I noticed something shift in my feelings towards her, from platonic friendship to something more. It was confusing as I've always identified as straight, I'm a woman, but there was an undeniable connection and desire to be there for her without being asked. It took me some time to understand and accept these new emotions cause they felt unfamiliar and strange, even questioned if it might be sign of some mental illness or something. In search of clarity I sought guidance from my therapist who reassured me that these feelings were genuine and not pathological or anything like that. Yesterday, as we sat together at the breakfast table after our usual morning routine of cooking and feeding her son, I mustered up the courage to express my feelings, told her sincerely that I enjoyed spending time with her and hoped she felt the same way too. Her face turned beet red, stuttering over words expressing gratitude for our friendship before eventually managing to say yes quickly and eagerly, like she couldn't wait any longer to confirm what she was feeling too. The rest of the day we spent cuddling on couch watching movies while son played video games in his room. It felt oddly domestic but comforting at same time, you know? We both acknowledged today would be official first date, which is a significant step for both us since neither one of us has dated anyone else since teenage years, plus autism spectrum disorders add additional layer complexity dating, which makes this experience all more meaningful exciting. I found a zipper on the back of my neck. I found it by accident. I was putting my hair up to give some mega turbo sloppy toppy, you know, the Glock 3000? Something I did almost every day. My hand brushed against something at the bottom of my hairline. It could have been a large skin tag. I finished tying my hair up and grabbed my phone, so I could see the thing better. When I saw it, I wasn't sure what it was. It was too big for a skin tag, but not the shape of a tick or something foreign. I realized as I stared at it that it was the top of a zipper. It was darker than my skin tone. It was more like a rosy gray. I nervously reached behind me to touch it. It was smooth, as if made of metal. But it wasn't metal. It was skin. Just not my skin. I was able to flip the zipper top up and down. It didn't hurt, but I expected it to. How long had it been there? I didn't notice it before. A rational person would have called a doctor. Called someone, at least. But I was compelled to open it. I pulled the zipper down just a little bit. It still didn't hurt. As I pulled, zipper teeth emerged. No blood came out, but my skin began to peel apart. I knew I should stop. My fingers trembled as I pulled a bit more. The skin easily separated. The top was 2 inches below my hairline when I heard my husband wake up. I ran to the door and slammed it shut. I locked it, my breath coming quick. I didn't want him to see what I was doing. I knew, on some visceral but invisible level, that it was wrong. The zipper scared me. What was underneath the zipper scared me more. I heard him lumbering towards the bathroom. He turned the knob. "Leah, let me in. I have to pee." "I'm in here," I called, my voice shaking and off. "Can I just pee real quick?" He was barely awake. "No. Go downstairs." He paused. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." I didn't mean to yell, but there it was. The silence that followed was heavy with hurt. He waited for a moment, maybe hoping for an apology or some sort of explanation. I gave him neither. Eventually his footsteps sounded down the hall. I felt relief and fear in equal measures. After a few breaths I returned to the mirror, my phone in my hand. When I was able to see the zipper again, a thick black liquid had begun dripping from the opening. It was too dark to be blood. I touched it. It was warm. The substance was sticky, stretching between my fingers. I brought my hand to my face, examining it closer. In the blood were small specks of golden light. There were little cosmos within the ooze. Max pounded on the door. "Why aren't you answering me?" My eyes left my hand and went to the door. How long had I been standing there? "Stop ignoring me." "I'm not," I whispered. "What are you doing in there?" "Nothing," I whispered. I heard his body slump against the door. He was crying again. "How long are you going to punish me?" I wasn't punishing him. This wasn't about him. Why does he always think everything is about him? I was at the mirror again, pulling the zipper further down. The black liquid was mostly contained within the zipper, but droplets made their way down my back. Something large was pushing against my spine. I could see it, like a fetus's fist against a mother's stomach. It pressed outward, making my neck and back look bumpy. There was something in there. Something that needed to come out. I pulled the zipper until it was down to my shoulders. I began to hear gurgling coming from the opening. For a moment I thought spiders were pouring from the teeth, but I blinked and they were gone. I had never felt so scared and yet, so compelled. Obsessed. My hand shook so much I couldn't hold the zipper to pull it. A slick hand shot out of the opening, covered in the black substance. I screamed. The hand flicked off the substance, almost nonchalantly, and grasped the zipper. Max's voice penetrated the scene. "What is going on? Are you hurt?" I fell to my knees as the foreign hand pulled the zipper further. It was at my shoulder blades, then the middle of my back, and then the lower back. My skin was peeled forward like a cocoon. The hand withdrew inside me. After a few moments, a leg revealed itself, stretching out of my body like a dancer. Then another leg. Bent backward, feet now on the floor, a figure completely emerged. It straightened itself. Long hair stuck to its body. I crawled away from it, terrified. My skin was still open and gushing the black substance onto the floor. I could still see cosmos in the ichor. The figure turned towards me. It was a woman, naked, bathed in black. She bent forward and smiled at me. "One more thing," she said in a voice I recognized. She reached over me, shoving her hand into the opening on my back. For the first time I felt pain. Her hand inside me felt like a hot knife. I tried to hold in my screams but didn't succeed. She rooted around for what felt like a lifetime. Finally, when I felt close to passing out, she removed her hand. And it was an axe. The axe was too large to have fit inside me. She slung it over her shoulder, still smiling. I heard my own breath. Panting. I also heard the faint voice of Max, from outside the door. He was begging, crying. He was knocking, pounding. The figure noticed too, her face turning towards the door. "Don't," I whispered. I knew what she wanted to do. I knew, because it was what I wanted. She set the axe down and turned to the mirror, putting her hair up. She wiped the substance off her face. Without looking at me she said, "Wait here. I'll take care of it." I gathered my knees to my chest, sobbing into them. She grabbed the axe. Unceremoniously she unlocked the door and opened it. Max's voice was small as he said, "Leah?" She closed the door behind her. "What is the craziest thing you've done while intoxicated?" "I don't know about you guys, but when I drink, I lose all sense of reality and do some crazy poop. A few months ago, I was out with some friends, getting absolutely hammered. Shots, beers, you name it, we were doing it. And then, out of nowhere, this girl walks in. She was a total dime piece. Gorgeous long hair, a tight little body, and an butt that wouldn't quit. I couldn't take my eyes off of her. So, like any idiot in my state, I decided to make my move. Now, normally I'm a pretty smooth operator when it comes to the ladies, but when I'm intoxicated, all bets are off. I stumbled over to her, slurring my words and probably reeking of booze. To my surprise, she actually seemed interested in me. We started talking, and I could tell right away that she was into me. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were making out in the middle of the bar. It was like something out of a movie. Her lips were so soft, her body so warm against mine. I felt like I was on top of the world. But then, things started to get a little weird. As we were making out, I felt something hard pressing against my leg. At first, I thought it was just a phone or something. But then, I realized what it really was. She had a effing ding-a-ling. I pulled away from her, completely shocked. I mean, I'm not homophobic or anything, but I was definitely not expecting that. She looked at me, a mixture of embarrassment and anger on her face. "What, you're not into that?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I didn't know what to say. I was so intoxicated and confused, I just stumbled out of the bar and made my way home. It wasn't until the next morning that I fully processed what had happened. I don't regret making out with her. I mean, she was still a beautiful girl, but the fact that she had a PP completely threw me off guard. I guess you never know what kind of surprises life is going to throw your way, especially when you're intoxicated. The experience left me feeling a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was embarrassed and humiliated. On the other hand, I was kind of intrigued. I mean, it's not every day you make out with someone who has a PP. It's not like I'm into that kind of thing, but it was still a pretty wild experience. So, there you have it. The craziest thing I've ever done while intoxicated. I'm sure there will be more to come, but for now, I'm just left with a million questions. What would have happened if I hadn't pulled away? Would we have gone further? Would I have liked it? I guess I'll never know. My young daughter is overreacting over another girl having the same dress as he for prom. So she's been poop talking behind her back the entire time. A few weeks ago, I took my daughter Juliet shopping for her prom dress. She picked one that she absolutely loved and she truly looks like a princess. Then, last week, she was very upset because she saw on Instagram that a classmate had bought the same dress, but in a different color. She tried asking the other girl to change and the girl, rightfully, told her no. I was sympathetic and let her vent, also adding that it was a different color so at the very least, it wasn't too similar. The issue is, Juliet has been trash-talking the girl for the past week, saying she's ugly and has always been a copycat. This is very out of character for her, she's never been a gossip. But I've heard her venting to her friends about it. I let it go because what does venting really matter? Then I got a call from Juliet's history teacher saying that she overheard Juliet talking poorly about this girl repeatedly. While the girl is not in the class and there's no evidence of bullying, she is worried it'll get there. I sat Juliet down and said, while I understand completely that this is frustrating and I may not get all that comes with dresses and such, this isn't fair to the other girl. From what it seems, she didn't purposefully do this to hurt her. I pointed out the different colors. Also offered to take her to return the dress and she could get another if having a unique dress was that important. Juliet said that she shouldn't have to get a new dress. She kept trash-talking this girl. I finally told her it's a dress. Your feelings are valid but you need to stop being so dramatic and let it go. This upset her and she left the room in tears. I tried talking to her about it but she stayed in her room. My eldest told me I technically wasn't wrong but I shouldn't have said it. I really try not to be a bumbling dad who doesn't know what he's talking about. I learned all stuff related to raising girls, have always made it clear they can come to me for anything, etc. I sat down with Juliet again and said I stand by my sentiment, but I also think there has to be more going on. As I said, it's just a dress and this isn't like her at all. She doesn't even have a history with this girl since they don't talk at all. They only follow each other on social media because everyone follows everyone. I pushed more and asked why a dress was so important. She eventually admitted it wasn't. Then went on to say that she's felt weird about prom this whole time and her senior year overall. When I asked why, she started crying and said she missed her mom, she wished she was here, etc. My wife passed when Juliet was 5 so she never truly had her for any of those big milestones that a girl would have with a mother. Watching her friends go through all these things with their mom reminded her that she doesn't have one. I gave her a big hug and held her while she cried. I cried a little myself. I knew that Juliet struggled with her mom's death but had no clue it was still such an issue. Once she calmed down, Juliet insisted that she had never said anything to the girl but agreed to apologize for even asking her to change the dress. She also promised to stop talking junk. I told her next time to just talk to me about it. I miss her mom too. When my eldest was going through all these milestones her senior year, I definitely felt that someone was missing and that my wife should be there. So the crisis is over.